appeal farther, she yielded to the promptings of fury and necessity and defied nature itself. I mean, she had a baby. Seizing her child, the babe at the breast, she said, "Poor baby, why should I keep you alive in the middle of famine and civil strife and war? We will only face slavery with the Romans, even if we survive until they arrive. But famine will forestall all. So you be my food, an avenging omen for the partisans, and to the world the only fate is yet untold of Jewish misery." She killed the baby, roasted him, ate half, concealing and saving the rest. The Jewish soldiers busted in, smelling the unholy odor, and threatened that unless she produced the food, they would kill her on the spot. She said, "No problem." She had served as fine a portion for them and disclosed the remnants of her child. Overcome with horror and stupefaction, they stood immobile, and she said, "This is my child, so is the deed. I have done so. Don't be softer than a woman, or more tender-hearted than mother. But if you're so pious, I'll eat the rest for yourself." And so this is told over in the Medrash in different words in the Medrash Rabbi Eko. It's in the Tanakh, in Malachim, if you remember, when there was the siege of Shomer, and the two women came to the king, Yehoachaz, and they said, "She's cheating. Yesterday we ate my child, and tonight we're supposed to eat her child, and she won't give it to me. So I want justice." Meaning, a famine makes people do crazy things. All right? And that's what this Kinnos is about. Where is it? This Kinnos about in 238. Because it says in Tochal Nenoshim Piri Molei Tipucha Ali. The Kaleri is collecting all these stories of cannibalism and things like that. You have women eating their own children. They're cooking their own children. There was a woman, the Medrash says, who used to weigh her kid every year, and give tzedakah over the weight, and now she ate the kid. To goes and pas rosh to Chana Susan Prochin, or they were what he called the Romans, tied the hairs of the girls and dragged them by the horses. You had in Echo, he talks about the babies trying to nurse and there's nothing there. So you have the parched tongue of the baby at the mother's breast. If you have two women, like I just told you in Book of Malachim, saying, "Hey, let's divide up the children. Tonight we eat mine, tomorrow you eat yours." Or here's the portion of my kid, now I want a portion of your kid. If people ended up eating their parents in caves, again, that's a medrash after the Bar Kokhba rebellion, this hiding in caves when the Romans were looking for them. And they had no choice but to go eat. They weren't killing people, but it's cannibalism at dead bodies. Which, by the way, you're allowed to do. I'm not, but then you could do that, horrible as it is. But the bottom line is, the guy sneaked out of the cave and pulled in a dead body and he ate it. Then he realized it was his father. That's what he's saying over here. Babies dying, expiring at the mother's breast. If the spirits of the infants go heavenward from their swollen corpses, the tefuchim, when starvation you swell, that. It's the what's the right word? Women miscarrying because they have no food, from the malnutrition, and the shrinking of the breast. Okay, listen, I want to tell you something. I'm sorry to say this. This is happening to those hostages now, because what I read in the reports are they're not giving them the right food. So they didn't get protein or nothing like this. Did you see this? So the muscle mass and all this kind of stuff. No, they're messed up. Anyway, the people that they rescued 6 months ago were all messed up because of the lack of food. I'm sure Israel put them like on a special, hospital regime. These people now, it's terrible. The Arabs, I don't know what they give them every day, a pizza or something like that. You can't, your body can't survive, especially females. It's really very bad. Into Kashel Nishmonas Mamokim Aluchin, And now he talks about the 800 Kohanim who were trapped in Arabia. That's the famous story where they gave them, to blow up their bodies. That they gave them the thing and they opened it up and the air came in them and killed them. If you reduce 90% to 10, if 80,000 Kohanim get killed, young Kohanim, to they get burned, like we read in Josephus. That's the story, Nebuchadnezzar Zeradan, with the bubbling blood, where thousands and thousands of Kohanim on that rock, the bloody rock. Or if people are swollen by the fruits, the Medrash says this in Sodas Josephus. One of the things he used to do in those days is when you're starving out a city, you to make it worse, the besieging army puts hold these big what's the right word? Tables full of fruits and goods and food. And then you and at a certain point, it gives a physiological, receptions in you. That's what it says happen. It says, if in one stone you have hundreds of baby brains, that's in Beitar. These are all from Midrashim. Same thing. 300 babies' brains on one stone hole. Again, that's from Bar Kochel. If you see the young girls being marched off by Nebuchadnezzar Zeradan, helplessly. Again, how many died in Bayis Rishon after the city was captured and after Tisha B'Av, when they marched them from Yerushalayim to Babel? How far is it? The map, more or less. How far is it from Jerusalem to Babylonia? And you can't go straight because that's desert, so you got to go up, Syria and down. So first of all, like this, who in this room, unless you're really in good shape, all joking aside, could walk at a pace from Jerusalem to Syria to Baghdad and not die on the way? I mean, Imam's got to be in great shape or not. In Tasha, that's the rape. And girls and boys dying of thirst. So he just listed a whole bunch of cases, all of which are based in Chazals, right? Not from Josephus. And he's saying, look at all these horrible things happen. It's all I need. But Hashem, of course, says like this. Well, you always talk about what happened to you. You don't talk about what you did to others. And what about the fact that you killed Zechariah? You never mention the fact that you murdered Zechariah, and that's the bubbling blood story. Now, that doesn't necessarily justify killing all these millions. It's a mashal. He's saying like this. Hashem is saying, my Averis, you talk about it. Your Averis, you don't talk about it. You see? I mean, they killed Zechariah. They killed a lot more than Zechariah. That's his point. Yeah, Gila Rai Shvich Adam B'Vodazar. Shvich Adam, it says, Menashe covered Jerusalem with blood from one end to the other. So, first look in the mirror before you talk about anybody else. And that's the next one we're going to do. The next one we're going to do is famous Isaiah 1. Everybody knows this, the 10 martyrs, that's Malchus. Again, it's a poem. Even the art scroll says, if you look at the bottom, the liturgical accounts are not meant as historical records, but as dramatic accounts of the story in order to evoke feelings of loss and repentance on the part of the congregation. This is how they used to do it. But it is true that between this time and this time, the Romans killed all these Gedolim. I mean, that's the bottom line. But it was all at the same time or different years. It doesn't really matter for this purpose. Because I've tried to arrange it that each one of these Kinnos we do is more or less around a certain theme. The other one was about cannibalism, for example, which is pretty terrible, or parents' inhumanity and children, that sort of thing. This one aspect of Gullus, or Korban, is what we call today the killing of the Gedolim. It's happened many times. That's its own unique category. And we know, by the way, how many Gedolim did Jews kill? Like I said, for Ochos, Menashe, those guys, I mean, they killed everybody that they could. But here's the Romans. Usually the Romans didn't persecute the Jewish religion, but sometimes they did. As best as we can tell, Rabbi Shmuel and Shimon Gamliel were part of the rebellion. It mentioned Josephus, actually, that broke out against the Romans at the beginning. Although it's pretty clear to me that at some point they said, don't do this anymore, and they weren't listened to. But the bottom line is that when the Romans captured them, they killed them, executed them. 50, 60 years later was Bar Kokhba rebellion. And after that, the Romans killed Rabbi Kiva, Achinim ben Trajan, Yehuda ben Bob, and some other people. From different stories in the Gemara, you can put it together. Don't, underestimate the effect it can have somebody seeing a big tzaddik getting killed, because they can say the heck with the whole business. They say Acher went off the derech because of that. That's one version of how Acher, who was a Tana, switched sides and joined the Romans and became part of the Gestapo. Acher. I'll say it again. He was a Tana, and he went all the way to the other extreme. And everybody's trying to figure out why. Many different versions of the story. One of the versions of the story is he saw the tongue of Chutzimus HaMaturguman being eaten by dogs. So notice one of the martyrs was Chutzimus HaMaturguman, who was a famous rabbi, Rashiva. And I guess the Romans chopped off his tongue because he was supposed to be Maturguman, such a good speaker. So as a punishment, they cut out his tongue. And the tongue is eaten by dogs, which is a bisionis. And basically, it's like this. There can't be a God if he would let this happen. I mean, it can't be. Certain things can't be. Which makes sense. Even Moshe Rabbeinu said at the peak of his spiritual powers, when he reached the top of his spiritual powers, he said, show me your face, right? Tzadik v'rola, Rasha b'toglu. See, Moshe Rabbeinu said like this I don't understand, right? Why is it Tzadik v'rola, Rasha b'toglu? And Hashem said, I'm not going to tell you. You can only see my back, can't see my face. So if it bothered Moshe Rabbeinu, don't be surprised if it bothers you and me. And don't be surprised if it bothers Lisha Mavua. And you tell me, how many people did we know? Maybe I'm aging myself. Holocaust survivors who said this is after Hitler shot all my family, and I said the heck with it. And you can't blame them. You're actually impressed with the people who decided to take from even after what they saw. So this is the effect of the destruction of these tzaddikim. So it's told, as we all know, in a very stylized and famous form. There's two versions, one's in Yom Kippur, one's in Tisha B'Av. The stories are not exactly identical, right? But he says over here that, no, he skips the whole part that you have in the other story that they went to Shemayim and, he asked, about Yosef and so forth. And he cuts right to the chase where he says, can a full girl, the Romans cast lots who to execute first. Can a full girl Rabbi Zera? They killed Shimon Gamliel first, right? And he said, Mizera and Shakal wanted to cry over the other one, not the Rosh and Sakabus and Menora Torah. So they killed Rabbi A, and Rabbi B held his head, the severed head of Rabbi A, and he said, I'm going to cry over before you kill me, and that's what happened. Some people, Abba Gemora, Pam Gaber Batar, Nikas Misa Gemora, even he couldn't understand it. It's how to roll up. The Shimon Gamliel, the Pam Gaber Batar, this what happens to him, and Sibel Lahabshi, it's over Saras Khira Kim Bori Nafshi Nabar. And then this Rabbi B had a worse fate because they skinned him alive before they killed him. Maybe died from the pain. The first one, they just chopped off the head. The second one, they tore off the skin, right? Rosh HaPosha Migimol Tefillah Baram, when he reached the point of the tefillin, saw he really screamed. And there's this part of the land shook. I emphasize like that. Point of the matter is, skinning is skinning. I mean, you imagine the tortures they did. And then Rabbi Kiva, as we all know, and everybody knows soccer is martyrs to Balish Taba, and they combed it with an iron cone. I don't even know what that means, but I don't want to know. Right? Cone with an iron cone. Who knows what that means? Right? And then, of course, he died, Ashrecha b'Tahora. So here they don't go through all the details like you have in the Gemara. They say died in Echad and all the rest of it. But it was over 100 years old. So take a 100-year person, 100-something-year-old. I guess they sliced him or something like that, like a bread machine, whatever. And then Baba Rabachim B'Shul Ba'Atzara, and then Yehudim Baba, he's the one who gave the smicha before they killed him. Shimshon Yadura, Yeshu B'Tainis, Chaniyah Ben Tradian. We all know the story of Chaniyah Ben Tradian. They burned him, but he said, Osios Parchos, drill this rough of Osios Parchos. Right? The guy said, if I will take away the water around you, the wet wool, and you'll die quickly, will you give me a bracha? He said, what do you see? He said, I see the Vilnius rough and the Sefer Torah, they wrapped him in the Torah is burned, but the Osius Parchas, which we always interpreted to mean that the Torah is eternal, right? You can burn the Sefer Torah, but you can't burn the Osius. It survives, right? It says, Sefer Torah, and Chosib Shabbat Sefer, and then it goes to the next one, Yushabbat Sefer, and he was eaten. They killed him, and the body was eaten by dogs, which means they try to bizion this as much as they can, because they know about Jews how much a kavor means. Like I told you before, that's what turned off Elish ben Abuya. Derek Belozman Shemua Bachron and Madrikira, and Derek Belozman Shemua was stabbed. Erev Shabbos by Kaish V'Ikra. So first they made Kiddush, and then they did it. Shofel over Nichla Chaim Legama. So he said like this: I'm making a Kiddush, Borei Pari, and they chopped up his head like that, before he could finish the bracha. And so here we mourn over this. Kohena Pimba Babla Anas Bagara Skila Strafe Herg Bechenik Michla Shar. So by the time you're finished, they did all the strife between one and the other. They did Skila Strafe Herg Bechenik. If you think about it, this one they crushed, and this one they skinned alive, and this one they stoned this way. This one was burned at the stake. So what's left? So this is just by way of mourning. Amitz Berkheim Koshlis. He end off by quoting from Almost. Strengthen our buckling knees. This is simply a repetition in a poem form of the stories that all happen with the Hasar Harugi Malchus to remind us, like I said before. I'll give you an example. What's his name? Something like that. You had big Gedolim that were, killed by Hitler. He was shot. And another guy was gassed. And another guy, who knows what the Germans are. Not only the Germans, the Litvaks, the Polacks, the others, who knows what they did then. And when they came in Lithuania, I have a book here from my father's town. They boxed. They came in. He just bashed his head in with axes. He's sitting at the table. This is part of our story, the Sarugi Malchus, which goes down from generation to generation. Now we'll say it.
Come on, stop.
The next one is going to be Achrish Mena Badabera. Now we switch to 3 or 4 Crusades. As you know, this is Ashkenazim. We are Ashkenazim. And the Ashkenazim, in their memory, have said there's a Churban Beis Hamikdash. There was also the Churban of the Crusades of Tatnu of 1096, when whole communities committed suicide. That's the point. From people. And this was like a shock. And these that we're reading now have a different character because they're written by eyewitness survivors. You see? And you have to understand, everything was going great. The Jews in the Rhineland lived relatively prosperous. It's all kind of stories about that. And all of a sudden, and by the way, and the local government and the police and all that were fine with them. But some group of crusaders that just the crusade started in 1095 formed in what we call today Belgium and went down the Rhineland and started killing all the Jews from town to town. In other words, an outside mob. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's like what we had this past year with the college campuses. All of a sudden, a bunch of agitators show up, and then next thing you know, everything turned upside down. It was good until now, and then everything turned overnight. This, of course, was much worse than the Crusades because they came in armed mobs that the local police were not able to contain them, and the government was in recess. The Holy Roman Emperor was away. Same for a reason. It was Henry IV. So he liked the Jews. That's the point. He was good to the Jews, but he was arguing with the Pope in Italy, and like happened October 7th, all the regular law enforcement things didn't work, and the Jews found themselves helpless, and sometimes literally helpless. And these crusaders are coming at them now. It's the Middle Ages. So that means if you convert, you could save your life. And there certainly were Jews who did convert. But there were many, many, many who did not. And it doesn't make any sense. They're the ones who suffered because they end up saying like this. Rather than become Christian, which they viewed at that time as a Avodah Zarah mamish, will commit mass suicide. Now, I want you to understand, suicide is not so pashut. Me, myself, and I can shoot myself. But who shoots my wife? And who shoots my children? And there wasn't shooting, it's the Middle Ages. Who stabs or cuts the throat of my grandchildren? You understand? Like boggles the mind. Now, nowadays, you'd say like this. Why didn't you convert and then hope later on? That's right. That's not how they saw it. And then the mob was there for so and so many days and then left and moved on. And then life went back to normal. If we could, except that the streets are strewn with dead bodies and suicide situations and rape and pillage and this kind of business. And you're left one of 2 or 3 people left alive or something like that. And from, Ashkenazi Jew in the time of Rashi. Rashi lived 50, 60, 70 miles away from this. It didn't hit him. It's close by. And you're wondering, the Rebbeinu, what happened? And it's like, it's God asleep at the switch. And people say, don't talk like that. And he said, what do you mean don't tell me don't talk like that? Leave me alone and I want to speak. Right? Just shut up and let me say what's on my mind. I cannot contain within me, silently, my complaints against the Rebbeinu. And I don't care what happens to me. I'm screaming about the violence to you who dwell in heaven. Those, what just happened? And like a Holocaust survivor says, my ruach won't let me alone. I cannot be silent. Don't give me this from stuff. Like a pregnant lady, you can't say, giving birth, you can't say don't scream when you're giving birth. It's just part of what it has to be. I have to do a hesped mar. And I don't care if my roars and screams are as loud as the ocean. I want to make a hesped when my whole community, my Ada, which is now dead, which is Nitlo Sham, which become a wasteland. How can it be? I'll tell you again. A week or 2 ago, everything was good. And then it wasn't. And then a week later, it's good again. Like, what is this? How can joy cease? Every face black and every head bald. Meaning, you see all these corpses lying around. Because what happens when the pogrom or the suicide is over? There's a bunch of dead bodies lying all over the place. Who's going to bury them? I'm not. You're not. You know what I'm saying? Now, as you see these corpses there until the surviving Jews somehow or other took care that they brought every body to be buried or something like that. But meanwhile, you're looking at a grotesque scene. and every beard is like cut because they what's the right word? Abused the corpses, desecrated the corpses. Ever since this terrible goyim came to us, they trampled my heroes. And you'll see in a minute, these were like very yeshivish communities, very frum. They're Talmidei Chachamim, they're tznius, girls and everything. Like this is the wrong place for this to happen, but it happened. The bodies are lying all over in every street. My children are now like, literally like dead sheep lying around everywhere. Slaughtered sheep. This I'm going to scream about. I don't care what anyone says. And I say to the rest of you, survivors, whoever there, gather around me so we can wail together. But gather to me, you wandering sheep. Let's all scream together at the top of our voices. Scream at the heavens and let the earth scream also. So it's very sad. He said, 5, 10 of us have left. Let's get together and have a good cry. And not only that, I want the angels in heaven to cry also. You guys upstairs in Shemaim, you get together making a good and kol kachol tzarka b'chira. I want you to scream also up there. And being misainen, being mourning for this adas sebezura. The Jewish people always called a sheep thrown into a corral with 70 wolves, right? 70 foxes. Seb bezura ben shivim ze'eben, right? So if you throw a sheep into 70 hungry foxes, what are the chances that the sheep is going to survive? And yet the Jewish people have survived, but knows we're in a very helpless situation. And so cry over this. And it wasn't just a regular death. It was a suicide al Kiddush Hashem that they got together. They assembled in sanctity. Make a Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem means like this, to give up their life. And everybody strengthened themselves because it's not so precious to commit suicide. So each one had to mechazik the other. So they made like a mass resolution, we're not going to bow down. No, we're not going to convert. So those that did, but those who didn't, they said we're going to give up our life. And again, it's not so precious because it means the parents have to shech their children. And the adults did not have pity. The children who had been their glory up to a minute ago. These same parents chopped off heads and busted backs, spines. And as they killed their own children and grandchildren, they said, we weren't zochah to be megadol you l'Torah, will make you a carbon like a haktorah, like an olah. And there's nothing to worry about because in 1 minute we'll all be in Shemayim anyway. We'll be in a better place. Here we'll get killed, but we'll all meet in a second in Gan Eden. And he says, he's a survivor witnesses. He said they all got together and they made an agreement to accomplish the din of Shemayim. There's a kingdom Shem Ranam Yotchil Nidun. At first they killed the senior citizens. And meanwhile, the Crusaders are getting closer, and they killed a bunch of people also before they could be killed by fellow Jews. And the fats of these bodies mixed with the fats of their bodies. That's the lashon of karbonos. And fathers who had been rachmanim, as a father would be, all of a sudden turned into terribly cruel. They feast all over Salbanim, and they cast lots. Which one goes first? And whoever draws the short straw goes down with chalofas, that's a shochet knife, the sakinim. Right? He shechted them. And kids from the richest families, raised in red silk. Now you see them licking the dust like snakes, meaning, go on the ground as they're dead. And young girls, the Bukshashan in fancy dresses, love is Chasan. They faint in the arms of their chassan. Meaning they, well, listen, in those days they used to get married very young. So notice they killed 2 teenagers, 14 and 14, and he's a chassan and she's the kala, and that's it. They're chopped up by swords and spears. You tell me I shouldn't scream about this? Remember this, kala das nabonin. And don't be lazy and be marbakinim here. Meaning that's to say in screaming about it. And I want you to cry and make a hesped for this chasidim and agunim. This is what makes me depressed. So after you tell me I shouldn't be. And now, he says, I turn to Hashem and the Torah. You, the Torah, should be mourning. Why? Because they killed all these Talmid Chacham. Among those who committed suicide were all these big learners and Talmid Chacham and that sort of thing. And so basically, no, this is before the Tosis. He says, you should, how should I put, you're now alone. There's nobody going to learn you anymore. Abel Yochad Asi Loch Misped, you should make a special Avelis. Al Tosim Mishotach Borsim Achmar. For all this, it uses the language of sailors, or those who sailed the seas of the Talmud. Notice those are big Talmid Chacham that can learn deep. The people could answer kashas, who could make chedushim to discover hidden things in the text of the Gemara. Who's going to do it now? Who's going to not? You use the language of the Aron, right? It would flatten the mountains and fill in the holes of the valleys. So that's a language of who can answer the kashas and make the terutzim and the chedushim. Who's going to do that now? Who's going to answer all the havayas of Abai and Rabba? Who's going to understand the Ziris and the Dharm, the hard sugyas? Who can fight the Milchama Shel Torah? Milchama Ovdu. Guess what, Torah? All your Klei Milchama are gone. The Nafla Giborim, Ashrei and Maskim Zerakim. Now, he says like this: I don't feel bad for the dead because he's a from guy. I don't feel bad for the dead. They're in Shemayim. Ashrei Maskilim. You Maskilim, because it's like this. Maskile Ramke Kachavim Nindu. Pasuk says in Daniel. Those who are the tzaddikim, fine. So you're in Shemayim, you're getting. What about us? The survivors left down here. You see? Hashem Maskil Zerakim. B'mnucha Shalom Nachli Shalom. They're in Menucha Shalom. They're in Gan Eden. Woe to the survivors, to the Nosarim. We're the ones suffering. We're going to have eternal torment. Let's put it this way. These guys who survived this, for the rest of their life, are they going to be normal? That would not be normal. Right? They may survive, and I get it. They're not going to be normal. The Medivas Nefesh v'Chalon Tzrim. What's left for us? A life of anguish, Medivas Nefesh, of psychological pain, Chalon Tzirim, killing an Einzamos. We're going to go around, everything we look at is killing an Ein. Meaning it's going to drive us crazy. Salmovis or Sadarm, we're going to have a living death. Like it says in the Tochacha, in the morning you'll say, when is it night? In the night you'll say, when is it morning? You can't stand life. After they've seen what they've seen. Like it says in Azina, we've seen the sword outside and we've seen the sword inside. And now he says, I turn to Hashem. You who see all hidden things. How long are you going to look like this? This is parallel of in Chavakuk, famous pasuk. Torinai miasas Rabbi habene el amalo yuchal. You who have pure eyes and can't see anything evil. Loma sabit bogdim. Machrish kival Russia is sadik mimenu. Why you, God, who are so pure, why are you silent when you see the Rishonim consume the tzaddikim? So that's what he's paraphrasing. He says, "On Mosai Tabit Rochel Storm, Kani l'Saros Chashes V'Zurim." Show some zealotry for the Torah that these guys messed up. Now, let's put it this way: I want to see something to come over here. Right? Can't be the Germans just get away with it. It can't be the Crusades just get away with it. I got to see something coming. Kalur Peruk Kron Storm. They tore the Torah into pieces. And they had big fires where they burned all the Torah. Are you going to just sit there and take this? Oh God. I want to see the come over here for the blood that was poured out. I want to see some of the come from the showed from the violence that was shown to the cries of the tortured. And he ends by saying, Am shall be pesha. Am shall be pesha. These are people who survived the pogrom. Have some pity on those who were saturated with bitterness. Right? The unim we are cheptzamriris. Osam bal tachrima karnamag biyavarimo. Don't forget that. So, as I said before, this is not like Kaleri or something like this. This is what you call a survivor who wants to get off his chest. And now we recite this. Okay. The next one we're going to do is Meeting Rosh Hashanah. Here again, it's in the same thing about the Crusades. However, the one we just read before is what you call like raw emotion. Even though he's a poet and put it together. This one is more stylized. And it's also by a survivor, you can tell. So he saw all this stuff. But he's like telling it more like in a frum way. But nevertheless, he's trying to give you what happened not in one town, but in several. These are called the Xerashum. Because the Crusaders went down the Rhine River. This particular group. By the way, most of the Crusaders were elsewhere and didn't bother the Jews at all. One group, if you're unlucky, one group was bad, and they went down one area, but it was like right through the Jewish neighborhood. Spires, Worms, mines, in those areas, which had the yeshivas and the prosperous Jewish communities, and the Masorah, and the Gemara, and all that stuff. Those happened to be the ones in the way. If you lived a little bit this side, a little bit this side, they didn't come to you. Right? Like Rashi lived like over here. Rashi was alive at this time, and he was worried. It just never went to his thing. And after the Crusades were over, the Rashi was consulted because you had what is always called the detritus of the Holocaust. In other words, what happens afterwards. Imagine, for example, there's a town, a Jewish community. Let's say, for argument's sake, there's 1,000 Jews there. So let's say, for argument's sake, 500-600 died, 700 died. How'd the others survive? Some people were out of town, some people hid, and some shmad. Some converted. We didn't know how many. I could be wrong. Maybe 300 died and 700 converted. We don't know. Because they were scared for their life. Not everyone committed suicide. Many did. We don't know. And then the Crusaders leave. I told you before, the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, was out of town. And when he heard about this, he rushed back. And he was very angry. He said, He says, I'm firing all the police chiefs and everything. Who let this happen? And this was all wrong. And not only that, but he convened the Catholic Church, all the bishops. It's called the Council of Constance. And they said all the Jews who converted can go back to being Jewish because it wasn't fair. So then you have a funny situation. Here you are months after this terrible times. And let's say it's a show like this size, for argument's sake. And let's say it used to be 80 people in Shabbos. And now it's 30 people in Shabbos because the others died. And this guy, so I guess, I'm going to set up, I always want to set up the Mizrach one, you know? I always want to do this and the other. And I'll get after Yonah. And on the other side, in the Ezra's Nashim, is the wife of one of the people committed suicide. She's like this, you schmo, my husband killed himself, Kiddush Hashem, you took the easy way out. And now you're getting shlishi? You understand? In other words, the Jewish communities tore each other apart. Imagine two brothers. One brother did the right thing, one brother did the wrong thing. And now the wife of this one said like this, you got the nerve? Because he said like this, listen, the house is empty. The store has no owner. I might as well run the store. You're taking over my brother's store? Yeah, besides the Khalitsa issues, I mean, that's a halachic matter. I'm just saying over here, who inherits the property of the dead? The survivors did. And so there was tremendous fights. And Rashi wrote a famous thing. He said like this: you have no choice but to put the past behind you. You see? Don't ask anybody what they did. Just move on. There's no choice. So if the guy takes over the house, they'll make a fight out of it. Because otherwise, you'll just tear each other to bits, and that would be even worse. That the survivors make it worse than it was before. You see? Build your life anew. Right? A guy might say like this: listen, your husband died. Why don't you marry me? My husband was a Kaddish. You're a Shmo. You were a Meshuggah. Life is like that. You see? So this is written in a more stylized form where it said, instead of saying I'm screaming at God, he said, like the Navi, I wish my head was full of tears so I could cry enough for what just happened. I wish I could cry all my life. That's poetic. It's for all the corpses of all the young. And I say to you now, everybody should say, Oy vavoy v'alalai. So this is for a chazan. This is like a year after, 2 years after. And they make this prayer. And we all know what happened, but we're having a formal crying over it. I'll run around with my eyes full of tears. These are all references to Psukim. And I'll bring with me to cry together all those who are bitter of heart, who are depressed. When we think of the children who died, the young girls, and the young boys, some of them were wrapped by the Crusaders, like in Hebrew books, and burned alive. So imagine people remembering their children being burned alive. Okay? They had been so pretty, they were more ruddy than sapphire, whatever, rubies. These children are at peak of health, are now lying like dead garbage in the street. And people say to them, don't stay away from the disgusting bodies, right? That's from Eicha. The Seirid and my eyes are full of tears and wails. And again, I call people to cry with sackcloth. When I think of those who were more precious than gold, the children, in other words, and the Talmid Chacham, he's talking about the girls, because it says called Kvuda Basmel Panima. So you see all these Jewish girls that were tznius and so, what's the right word? Delicate and refined. I saw them torn to bits. Along with all the books, because the Crusaders also ripped up all the swarm. Make aninas and mekonim, mekinoi. Especially what happened to the Torahs. A Torah Talmid Lomda. The base medrash is silent. Where's the Torah? Where's the Talmud? Where's the Lomda? So I walk into a shul, which used to be, let's say, for example, night seder. If I were to say, used to be alive, and it's empty. To tell you the truth, if you go to Eastern Europe today, that's what you see. They're making the Poland and Lithuania, one of these countries, you see the old shuls left there. The shul may be there, and nobody in there. And so you can only use your imagination. I remember I was in Kovna a couple of years ago with Shmuel. It's a Kohanis shul. Okay, I mean, I get it, and you can imagine what it was once like. Hey, it's empty. You see? They just opened it for the tourists. You see? Now, I'm talking about something from 100 years ago. What if this happened a few days ago? What if it happened a year ago? Live and cooking. And now, it's destroyed. There's no Yosef. There's nobody there. And I'm crying more in front of my hungry spirit. And now he's being stylized and saying, had to happen. The Crusaders went down the Rhine River and they wiped out A, and then they moved to Jewish community B, and the Jewish community C, and so forth. So the first one was Ashpira, spires. That's where you get the name Shapiro from. The Shani B'Shmonabo Yom Hukra. Here it gets historical. That was on the 8th day in the 2nd month. In other words, 8th of Iyar, to figure that out. Everything was quiet, like a quiet Shabbos. And all of a sudden, these guys showed up and it wasn't quiet anymore. They came and started killing Bachurim and Yishishi Ador. And Zakenim means Talmid Chachamim. They all got together to commit suicide. And 10 died. And then they came to the next town, killed Ramiza, Worms. Worms is where Rashi went to yeshiva. Okay? Bechura, the famous city, the chosen city, Gaoni Eretz Neki Tyra, full of great Talmid Chachamim. Pa'amayim Kiddush Hashem Yemorah. 2 occasions when the Crusaders came there and they made a Kiddush Hashem. Number 1, Esrim Shon B'Chodesh Tahara, on 23 days of Iyar. Chodesh HaShlishi B'Kriyas Hal Shora, and the 3rd day of Sivan. This, my friends, is why you say Avarachmin, at that time of the year. Usually in Shabbos and Baruchim, you don't say Avarachmin, but for Sivan and Iyar and Sivan, you do, because Avarachmin was made for this. Okay? They completed their souls with new, meaning they died. And then came mites. That's spires, worms, mites. Shum. They fled like eagles, meaning some in Mainz and some other places they ran away to hide in some fortified place, or maybe the bishop sometimes said you can hide in my house or my fort, but it didn't work because the Crusaders stormed the place, and when they were about to break in, they committed suicide. So they were Sharim Kalub. They fled like eagles, but then they fought like lions when they had to. They made the same thing, Kiddush Hashem. And again, I cry over them. The 2 Beis Hamikdashes. I cry over the 2 Beis Hamikdashes on Tisha B'Av, and I cry over the Mikdash Ma'at, the synagogue. As I cry over this Kehillah that killed over here. Because that's also Beis Hamikdash. It's a Mikdash Ma'at. It's also Beis Hamikdash. B'chodesh HaShlishi B'Shlishi, in the 3rd day of Sivan. That means just before Shavuos. Correct? No, so B'dam Meir was even worse. HaChodesh HaShenever L'Yod Mitzar, the month which turned into sorrow. It should have been happy, Shavuos. B'yom Matan Dos, Sibartla is Ashra, should be Sibarti is Ashra. On the day the Torah was given, and I hoped to see it confirmed, meaning we're all looking forward to Shavuos. B'yom Nesinos G'mor. But the day the Torah was given is the day the Torah was taken back. Because they killed everybody. The day the Torah was given is the day the Torah was retrieved. Also, the Torah went back up to heaven in fire, meaning they burned the Torah. And they not only burned the Sefer Torah, they burned the mental up, and the other thing. Now, when he says the mental, what he means like this: the Talmidei Chacham, the learners, because the Torah has pieces to it, right? Let me put it this way: if this guy's a great tzaddik, it's like he's a crown on the Torah. I mean, he's an ornament. So the Torah was those that learned Siman al Bachim Misbel Kashra Kishkula Harigasim Lasal Basafra Kisravis Ben Holim Rabira. Look here. He says, why are we doing this in Tisha B'Av? Because this poem that I'm reading was made for Tisha B'Av. He says, the destruction of a Kehillah is as bad as the burning of Beis Hamikdash. Shkula Harigasim Lasal Basafra. These tzaddikim, if they got killed, it's not less than the Beis Hamikdash. The only thing is like this: we don't make a Yom HaShoah. That's what he says. So we'll pack it into Tisha B'Av. And you can't make Tisha B'Av earlier. Al Kain Tachas Kain Hayom. Therefore, today on Tisha B'Av, mention it because the Crusades is not the Churban by Rishon, it's not the Churban by Sheni, and we can't let it go unmentioned. And I'll scream all day long from morning to evening. I'll base it on the cover. And for this, I can shout back on the Kinnos. Eli ve'elia kum homus. Everything is saying oy hayesh machol machil damas. Nothing can match the sorrows that we've seen. When I see and I remember the dead bodies, because you see they killed everybody, and then the enemy, the Goyim, they stole the clothes. You understand? Listen, what did Hitler do? Same thing. But they pulled off the clothes. So it's bad enough. You see your kids or your Zaidi, whatever, lying in the street. It's a naked. You see, that's real busy on this. They've lost in consumable chayes of behemoths. And since they're not being buried, they're being eaten by the animals. So then you see, it's horrifying. So you see, like I say, your Bubba, your Zaidi, your children, your grandchildren, they're being eaten by behemoths, and there's nothing you can do about it because you're like hiding during the pogrom. Old people, young people, babies, lying around being eaten by animals. It's full of the enemy, the Goyim, are pouring shame and insults on us. Where's your guy? How come he doesn't stop it? And anyway, you believe in Tchias HaMesim. Let's see your God go and make a miracle and bring back the neshamas. Ha ha ha. See, it's not true. And he turns again to Hashem and says, "You're so powerful, which means you're not to be Elaine. You're not to be silent in the face of insults, Hashem. I see you hold yourself back and you don't just zap these people. Because the Goyim say, if this really is a God, let him do something. I'll base him. And therefore I'm full of tears. And my heart is like a ugov, like a singer, like an instrument, and I can't stop screaming. I've been eaten up by the enemies. He's crushed all my bones. He trampled my heroes, all those who I relied on. Makosi Yanusha. Basically, our wound is mortal. We're not going to survive this. Now, it doesn't mean the Jews won't survive, but don't ever tell me you'll get over this. Right? Those who live through it, see, you're not going to get over this. This is going to stay with you till you die. That's why I say, leave me alone. I want to be alone with my bitterness. I want to cry with the bitter tears of my own. And you who are not there can't understand it, so get out of my way. That is this Kinnos. Now I'll say, Me'ita Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi, The next one is the third and the last one we'll do of the Crusades. Skip the fourth. Is Marty Shuman Many Amar. So you get the general idea already from what we talked about. And again, this is not as raw as the first one, but he mentions here a whole bunch of details that were not in the other. And again, the same idea. Marty Shuman Amar. Get off my back. You see clearly, like after the Holocaust, and when this was over, some people said, "Where is God? And how could this happen?" And so forth. And other people, from me, said, "Tell him like it's shut up, don't talk like that." All the rest of it. And he's saying, "Get out of my way. Don't tell me what to do." Amarti shumi many b'chiamor. Get away from me. I'm going to express my own bitterness. Mar nafshi bruchi akar. I got to get this off my chest. In Leviosa asim l'sur. I'm going to go and even fight with Leviosa. This, in other words, the bitterness will last until Tchias HaMesim. B'chi azir ali yadonich. That we're going to cry over the Yagam. Basami hisabu ginech al titni pugasavati besinoich. So these are all, stylized things. Now he says, "Domi al titni plight anishar." Don't stop crying, you shares al plight anishar, you survivors. Harimi kovazav kimora, kisherbal shemanikor. Now I want to tell you something. There's something therapeutic about this. Imagine the people afterwards who survived this and can't talk about it. That itself will drive you nuts. So he's saying, no, you share a plight, join with me. We'll cry with this together. Get out of our system. Hey, Lumen, so we all know what happened when the Goyim got together at one point. The Crusaders, in other words, when they entered into a bris against you, and they formed a council of what to do. You see, because I'll say again, most of the Crusaders didn't bother Jews, but this particular group wanted to get the Jews. And they made all kind of treacherous schemes. It wasn't simply they came back, they plot. I'll give you an example. They said like this: give me all your money, I'll let you live. He wasn't going to let you live. You understand? Like the Nazis did this. It's with tricks and plans. They wanted you to be scared to death. And they said we wanted to wipe out the Jews. The Jews responded, Lo niachim yengtu narz moro. That's the pasuk in Iyov. Hey yiktoleni lo yachal. Even if he kills me, I don't turn away from Hashem. So, Lo niachel, to him I turn, im yiktoleni. In other words, we're prepared to commit suicide, or at least give our life a kiddush Hashem. Heichen Hashem zeva kiddush kruv. Obviously, Hashem is arranged this like a carbon, literally a carbon. Then they started killing people right and left. Now, this has to do with the fact, like I told you, the Jews barricaded themselves in certain places. Not everybody got in. Some of the people in the out were killed by the Crusaders. Then they started killing people on the edges, and the guys inside decided to commit suicide. I mean, that's what he's telling them. Yisruni Kosha, sorry about it. They started giving us all these Yisrun. I'm not going to say, oh, the my wife. And being hit. Notice, like we say today, be beaten to death. If you've ever seen pictures, not the Germans, what the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, and others did, the neighbors, they beat people to death with baseball bats. I mean, like a lot, Tova Mektiv Habib B'Sarasenu. You, God, you're a Tova Mektiv. Habib B'Sarasenu. Look at our tsaras. Hishmidu Gibar Behesed B'Senu. They killed all of our Gibarim, all the big Talmid Chacham. All the good pieces of Klal Yisrael. They're all taken for the slaughter. The girls from the richest families and the best clothes. Babies that were being breastfed. Here he talks about the suicide. The father just made up his mind to be kovish his rachman, because naturally, what parent will kill children? But I'll tell you again, suicide here means mass suicide, and it was as a ma'aser b'chol yom, so to speak. I think I told you. I remember there's a famous shuv in the Marm Rottenberg. Now he lived after this, but things like this still happen occasionally. I remember it was from Koblenz, just to stick in my mind. And the story was like this. And they heard the goyim all making screaming. And so this guy, naturally, they're coming to convert everybody. We got to go into plan B. And he went and struck his whole family. And he was about to kill himself when the crowd ran right by the house. They were going to Memorial Stadium. In other words, it was just a mistake. And meanwhile, he killed his whole family. The question was, does he need a kapara, like a penance? Did he do a sin? And the Maharam said like this: it's a tragedy, but he didn't do a sin. Of course it's a tragedy, obviously. But in other words, you thought, there's one of these situations and you did what people do. That's the mice. The Middle Ages had such situations. See? And so he's saying, the father buried his mercy towards the carbon. His own children, he killed like they were animals. Now here's the thing. You can tell me that people who are adults went along with this. You can tell me maybe even teenagers, possibly 15, 16-year-old. I mean, if they were from and all this, they said, listen, we're going to kill ourselves on Kiddush Hashem. Like I said before, in 1 minute, we'll be in Shammai, we'll be together in Gan Eden. We'll be in a better place. But you can't tell me a 5-year-old kid, a 4-year-old kid. So, okay, I want to die Kiddush Hashem. That's not normal. And so the parent, that's what he's describing. We have this from the Crusader Chronicle, we were from this farm. The parents are running around to catch the children to shechta. You understand? And they don't even understand what's happening to them. So you can't imagine a bigger horror than a 3-4-year-old kid and the mother and the father's coming and killing them. I mean, it just boggles the mind. Because you can't tell me, oh, yeah, we're going for Kiddush Hashem. They're little kids. You see? So he says, they tell the mother, what's happening? We're being shechted and chopped up. Like, what's it in horror? As the parents prepared them like you do a carbon, the women are doing it to their own children that they bore and raised. How can you hear this and not cry when you hear Habein Nishcha, Love Kurse Shema? That the father's shechting the son. He's saying, Krishma, why shechting the son? And the son is being shechted. Whoever heard of such a thing? Or the daughter, attractive Jewish daughter, Navas Habayis, Basulas Bas Yehuda, Savar Poshta Machelis Yeshchivas Chida. This girl was from. So she says to the father, before you shecht me, you tell me that we're going to be a carbon. That's what you tell me. If you're a carbon, you have the rules of carbon. No pagima in the socket. Right? And so she goes to the grinding stone and sharpens the knife. So when you shech me, it'll be like a carbon. He says it's crazy. The machelis, the machelis is the knife. Machelis, she puts it on the grinding stone, make it sharp. Ayin rosa batida. Who can? The eye has seen such a thing. The mother dies from Beethoven. They didn't even kill the mother. So the mother is sedufim. The mother is so tortured by what she just saw. Parcharucha. Her spirit, meaning just collapsed. You know what I mean? This is Ema Bonim Smecha. Also, Abonis Kinnos Arusas. You found that there were kids, like teenagers, girls, Kinnos Arusas, engaged, betrothed, and they rushed happily. So they know that they went along with it to be shechted. Their blood should be like that from the Zeradim. I mean, from Zechariah. It should never be. They stop bubbling. The father now has succeeded in the mission. He shechted his whole family, the wife, the children, the sons, the daughters, all the rest of it. He's the one left. So what do you do? Like the Japs, fall on the sword. Correct? That's what he said. Now, I want to tell you something. Falling the sword is not a slow death. And so he lies in the field with the blood brush, He lies on the street, Mizgola Badam, expiring. The mother, who was fruitful, meaning who had children, she was the one. He's talking about another scene, not the other mother who died. And this other scene, I say again, it's crazy to us. They really said it's going to be like a carbon. So it's going to be like a carbon. First of all, you have the knife. Second of all, you have a Kabbalah Saddam. Right? You know what I'm talking about, right? You take a cup when they shecht the animal, and you catch some of the blood in the cup, and later on you throw it on the altar. So where's the cup? As the husband is shechting his children, she says, I'll catch the blood in my skirt. That'll be the Kabbalah Saddam. I mean, the Crusaders are minute away. You understand? So he says over here, you see, Sid Gondina Paria Kekriba Nefel, as she offered her kids, Utmur Mizrak Dam Kibbutz Fel. And instead of the usual Mizrak Dam for Kabbalah Saddam, Kibla B'Knafeho. She caught it with her skirt. Tisyapik to Farsh Kapel. And she's crying and screaming And she holds her arms wide. No, she says, "Oy vey, Korah semi yomi shoba shavi story." Who can ever? What I just described, Korah, the history I just said, miyoni shoba shavi story. This can never be equal. The choices of my people, the families, when they're given over herring. And what bothers me is they're not going to be buried. Does that mean there's something wrong with them? It can't be that they had such a kedusha dika end that they don't have a kavura, and like somehow or other it's going to affect them in Shemayim. Rayoni nivholu. My thoughts are catching me. I'm tremendously disturbed. If you remember, Yeram ben Nebuch, who was in Russia, so the Novi said about him, as he said about other dynasties, one of your punishments is going to be nobody in your relatives and family will be buried. Hames Yeram basada yochel aklovim. Hames ba'ir yochel aklovim. Hames basada yochel ofa shemayim. You understand? That whoever dies in your family in the city will be eaten by the dogs, and whoever dies in the field will be eaten by the buzzards, by the hawks. Look, this is the Middle East. What it means is like this. When your dynasty is killed, it'll be killed by another dynasty. It'll be political. You don't want to go bury their body because then the new team will say you're on their side, they'll kill you too. You understand? No, there's some countries like this today. You drive down the street, you see them shooting somebody, you keep driving if you know what's good for you. You know what's good for you. So the Navi said, one of your children will be buried. They say because he did a mitzvah and so forth. That one of your children, Aviyahu, one of your children will be buried. Kizel avada yovel yom kever. Shalom nimsa b'chol polo. So now I think of these victims now in the suicide. Shalom nimsa b'chol polo. They were shlemus in everything. Now shal tevelishim pachichelo. They were willing to be slaughtered for Kinnos Hashem. But gam kavura lahaisabo, and you don't get any kavura, right? I can't understand this. So notice, as a frum Jew, he's saying, I just don't understand that they didn't get buried. Tati libi mitzoto chenyanu. I incline my heart to try to figure out what's the pshat. Yodate said of Yosher. I know God is tzedek v'yosher, but tovuli rei lechem shir mafanu, and I know that people should have Yiras Shamayim. Kedosha lo yamin. Listen, maybe they weren't as righteous as I thought. Kedosha lo yamin hashlam avon l'sar. I know there's such a concept, like you see in the what's it called, Rosh Hashanah. You know, Sana Tokib, yeah. Hey, Kedosha lo yamin, yeah. Even the Malachim aren't perfect. And the Zchut HaSaira, you know, maybe they weren't so righteous. Siman Tov Lam Shalinas Bebek Kfur. But I found that I found the Chazal that says like this: it's a Siman Tov if he's not buried. You see, like the 6 million, they say that Siman Tov L'Adam Shalonis B'Nekar Kishura. Because in other words, whatever averis he did, as slight as they were, is paid up here by not being buried. So when you get to Shemaim, it's a home run. B'yom ever lo yira. Such a person who didn't have a kavura, didn't have a hesped, b'yom ever lo yira, will not have to worry about anything when he gets up there. When yom ever, when you're subjected to the trial. Therefore, my heart is trembling even worse. Because all these people died like a criminal or something, lied, stripped dead in the street, eaten by animals. How long are you going to be helpless? How long are you going to be like a gibor loyochel ashir, like a powerful person not able to sell? Let's see something to come over here, a sense of justice. Isn't there a pasuk in the Kamas Hashem? The Komnik must maze manai. I want to see something to come from those who tortured me. El Kana Benokam Anoi. Hashem ki gibor say, pay up all your dues. In other words, like this: pay everybody who did something wrong. Shover Kisov Shtar Klov Tikra. I want to see the receipt already. You understand? No, I don't want to see all the IOUs. Because we say like this. What happened to the Germans? Nothing. Well, it's IOU. They get to heaven over. I don't want to see no IOUs. I want to see everything paid in full. You see? I want to see the Shover. Shvor Gzar Russia. From upstairs in Shamayim, God can kindle a fire in the top parts. Like the Torah says, pay the person fire. So Necha Tatzmis, now you see, you have it here in parentheses because in Europe you couldn't put this in, it was too anti-Goyish. So Necha Tatzmis Safra al Tashkim. Kill all the bad guys, make them all drink poison. Hameis Tachas Yoda Nokim Yinokim in Buchazed Lutisnakim. How came the Gish Mulchama? I mean, is this why you, Hashem, are called Ish Mulchama? You're not doing it in Mulchama. So Rechel Chalas Mamling Napa. I want you to do some destruction of the enemies and some Nakama. Nokim Hashem Balchema. And he concludes by saying, Kani L'Shem Chavur Cha'el. Show some kinna, zealotry for the Chil Hashem that you did. L'dama v'decha shavuk l'harbes ariel. Tipi dam achas minidos. Yonah Magoy Malgrius. Yonah Malgrius. I want to see piles of the criminals piled up in the streets. But then he says at the end, I'm Iskapush. I'm out of steam. Right? Even my anger, I'm out of steam. The laziness so is called thought. I'm already tired from all this sorrows. Mahir gulos v'sal. Forget everything I said. Just bring the Mashiach now. See? I don't have time for the other. Just bring the Mashiach now. Ki I'm not going to believe Bishnas Gulai Bo. No, same side. Let's skip number 8 because it's going to just repeat what we did before. We'll go to number 9, which is Novi Chatosi Shmimo. Here, as I said before, try to choose piyutim. Each one has a theme and a different aspect of the Churban. And the one over here, the aspect is POWs, prisoners and slaves. Because Tisha B'Av was bad enough, but the aftermath of Tisha B'Av was terrible. Because the wealth of Jews ended up being carried into slavery and torture and things like this. And it was like a major problem for next years. Now, again, Josephus tells you, because the soldiers, I'll show you. It says, when Titus entered the city, meaning after they captured Yerushalayim, he was amazed by its strength and by the towers, which the chiefs and the mad families had abandoned. And when he observed their solid and lofty mass all the way up, all the fortified place in Yerushalayim, the tremendous size of each block, and how well they fitted, and their breadth and their height, he said, God, it must have been our ally, because human hands could not have taken this. At that time, he made similar observations to his friends, and he set free all persons imprisoned by the Jewish soldier chiefs. And later, he destroyed the rest of the city and pulled down the walls, but he left the towers as a memorial to his own fortune, to his cooperation. He owed his victory of such impregnable defenses. Now, that's not the Yerushalayim you have today. Later, the Romans knocked that down and rebuilt the city after Bar Kokhba's time. Because the soldiers were growing weary of bloodshed and survivors appeared constantly, Caesar gave orders to kill only those who offered armed resistance and to take alive all the rest. So in those, they killed so many Jews, they got tired of it over the several days. This is in the Gemara. Some people remember the Sikrikan thing in Gittin, where first they said whoever kills somebody will get paid, then later whoever brings that back alive, prison will get paid. It's all the same idea, okay? Now, the soldiers, in addition to those covered by their orders, slaughtered the aged and infirm. In other words, now you're talking about slaves. An old person or whatever, someone with a knee replacement, is no good as a slave. That's how it goes. People in their prime, who might be useful, they herded into the temple area and shut up in the court of women. So the Beis Hamikdash was now burnt. So the ruins flattened yet. This is right after Tisha B'Av. Later, the Romans will flatten it all. But imagine the place burned and charred. And so this area, Ezra's Notion, became the holding pen for the POWs, the prisoners. But there comes a horrible story also, because Titus appointed one of his freedmen as their guard, meaning a former slave of his, and his friend Fronto to decide the fate appropriate to each. So as you figure out who will go to the gladiators, who will go to the salt mines, who will go for this, who will go that, who will go to the brothels, and all those who taken part in sedition and brigandage, because they told each other to be executed. So Jews, if this is true, they told the Roman guards this guy was fighting against you and all that, and they shot him on the spot. He picked out the tallest and most handsome for the triumph. Because in Rome, you have a parade, and you have the best specimens of the conquered peoples, whom then you push off the cliff. Of the rest, who were over 17, he put in chains and sent to hard labor in Egypt. So you go back to Avodas Perich and Mitzrayim. Great numbers were presented by Titus to the provinces to perish in the theaters. The lions. So if you want to have some fun in Damascus and in Beirut and those kind of places, here's a bunch of Jews. Because you always need somebody to get killed by the lions. You see? By sword or wild beasts. And that's the stories we have in the Gemara. Boys and the girls who were sent to brothels and all this sort of thing. Many will remember that, I forget who it was, some rabbi was in Rome, it says, or Egypt, wherever, and they said there's a beautiful boy with a ringless hair, Futsoso of Taltalim Shcheres, right? And he went there and he said a pasuk, and the kid said a pasuk back, and he said, well, I got the ransom man, it was like Rabbi Shmuel or somebody like that. What's a boy with a pretty hair doing in a place he has to rest him out? This is what they were sold for. During the days in which Fronto was sorting them out, meaning they're all standing there in the sun, in the ruins of the Ezra's Nashon, the POWs, 11,000 perished from starvation. Some because they did not receive food, because of hatred of the guards. Others because they wouldn't accept it when offered, because it wasn't kosher. Moreover, to fill so many mouths, there wasn't even enough food. And so in the aftermath of Tisha B'Av, you have the story of the Avonim and the dying of starvation, and worse, and actually to be tall, dark, and handsome was bad. Because, we'll use you, for the gladiators, and that kind of thing. The number of prisoners taken to war was 97,000. Those that perished in the siege, 1.1 million. The largest number were Jews, not natives of Jerusalem, because they had come Pesach and were caught in the siege. Okay? Because he says the overcrowding caused death by pestilence and later by hunger, meaning during the siege, the city was overcrowded. And that itself was a health menace. We know from Corona that so many crowded in the city was illustrated by Cestius, who counted up carbon Pesachs, 255,600, 250,000 carbon Pesachs. So you can just imagine how many people were in the city in Pesach time. So this is enough. So you get the idea of the horrors. And obviously, the Jewish communities did what they could. It's never enough. And Pidyon Shvuyim came mitzvah number one. Correct? Pidyon Shvuyim is mitzvah number one. And so where a Jewish community was able to, they would try to ransom somebody out. They say that the Sanhedrin, there's a Tosefta, it says Sanhedrin, I think they didn't daven like for a month. And the reason is they had a good Shilohs up to here. You see? They had to deal with thousands and thousands of cases, time sensitive. Because maybe the guy's going to be sold off to slavery and they'll say, give your wife a get or something. You know what I mean? Or maybe only now for a second you can get somebody to testify that you saw the guy get killed or whatever. And so they didn't have no time to dominate. So it was a crazy tekufa. And listen, they did the best they can. What else can you do? So in this context, that's the way Josephus presents historically. The Elazar Kalir does it like the Gemara's case, the Medrash's case, that we all know the story, the Bein Abashal of Yishmael Kohen Gadol, that were in different rooms, and then they mated them together. They found their brother and sister, and they didn't do it, and they died. So in the Gemara's case, they died near the whatever, and that's the stylized way, as I said, for the poetic way of dealing with a tragedy. So he says over here, of all the tzaras, there's one special one. Bein Abashal B'Shmuel Kohen Gadol. They were captured and fell to two slaves. In other words, master number one bought this one, and master number two bought that one. You have the same thing in the South, with the Negro slaves. You know, saying you can buy a brother, this one buys a sister. And they live near each other, the two masters. By Sabbath, they once shooting the bull. I bought from the Jewish captives a beautiful girl called one of the silver cluster pun Turkey. She's a 10 and a half. Her face is better than the moon, and like the daughters of Job, you know, super pretty. Then you see in the slave world, you say like this: oh, she's super pretty. I can, you know, get a handsome slave out of her and sell the slave. You get it's that kind of thing. The number one way of making money in the slave thing is breeding slaves. Reo Sipolo Kifly, and the other guy told him twice as much. And I have a male slave, he's also handsome. Kashemish Misawi, he's like the sun that is as shiniest. Let's mate him together and we'll split the kids. I get half, you get half, I sell half, you sell half. Shem says them. And these were the children of the Kohen Gadol. So now they have the most, besides everything else, the most humiliating of experiences. Kiskim says, when the two made us come to do it together, they put the male slave and the female slave in a room at night. And the two masters are sitting outside the room, with the same intention. Inside, and it was a dark room. Inside, they're both crying bitterly. My father's a Kohen Gadol, and we're like this. The crying didn't stop until the morning. This one, meaning the guy, is crying from the very depths of his heart. Nin Aram, I am descended from Aaron. You know, a Kohen can't marry everybody. If anyone who's restricted is a Kohen, right? How can I now end up marrying a Shivcha? But he and the girl, on her part, Tiyal particular Shosef, she was piercing cries. Bas Yocheved Eich Lebetinose. I come from Yocheved because that's the mother of Aaron. How can it be the Ebetinose? Because those gods are even the stars were crying at this terrible spectacle. Or Boker. So no, let's put it this way. So they didn't do anything. Mating, he was in his corner, she was in her corner crying. And then when it came morning and it came light and they saw each other, Hoi Achi, Hoi Achos, Higbiru. Each one screamed at the other, it's my brother, it's my sister. And they hugged and kissed each other, and they died from sorrows. Right? So according to this, they died. So they embraced and died from sorrows. And it was in reference to this, was crying, that this particular Gzera bothers me among the others. And when I think about it, and Yirmiyahu was a Kohen, so he's particularly sensitive to this. He says, it's like burning in me. For a Bein Nabas like this, you have to have a big hesped, because it's the Ari B'Sicha B'Ahima, and that's why he says, I lament as I speak and I moan, but only Rima, meaning this is so painful, all I can do is a shrai. This not the content me, but the muscle like everything with this.
Okay. Easy to do.
Okay, now we move on. Believe me, after all the Crusader things, the rest of these are tame. The rest of these are tame. So now they tell over famous Midrashim. I told you has a theme, and the theme over here is Zechus Abbas. Or better yet, like this: where what happened to Zechus Abbas, right? And I don't know why the Kaliri changes. The Medrash basically says that when the Korban was going to happen, so the Yirmiyah or somebody says, "What about the Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and all the rest of it?" And Avram comes forward and he says, "Don't make the Korban." And God said, "Well, you did this and this sin." You know, maybe said B'mayit Dakirashan, something like that. And then Yitzchak also did some sin, and Yaakov also did some sin. And then it's Rachel. You know, and Rachel says like this: "I gave my sister to Simonim." So you know what a sacrifice that was. Nobody ever made a sacrifice like that. So you owe me one. Hashem's like, "Is that I can?" You're right about that. And for that reason, you know, so I'll do for Rachel because the Rachel Mavakov and all the rest of it. So here's a variation on that. That according to this, Yirmiyahu ran to Marsa Machpelah. Although really, I mean, he was in the jail cell in Jerusalem. Benom. And he said, Atomas Chavibas Matam Shochas. You beloved bones. In other words, you Marsa Machpelah. Why are you sleeping? Benechem Gol, Benechem Charebis. Your children are going to Golas, the base makes destroyed. I use the Chus Abbas Beretz Tolubitz. What happened to the Chus Abbas? Go Kom Bekim Chesed Banim. And so he activated them. They all start crying and screaming about the Chesed Banim, the lack of children. Doba Kol Tachdim Peishomen. They all went to the Rebbeinu Shalom upstairs. I have Torchas Echad Misham. What happened to V'Zarayt Bris Rishonim? So Hashem answers, look, hey, maybe Kobetov. They did a Avodah. They switched my covenant for Tohu. They did it without any fear. And I gave him some time off, meaning I gave him a second chance. And they never repented. How can I be misopic? How can I forgo the fact that they say Lohu? They don't believe in Hashem. So Avram steps up to the plate. And he prays to Hashem. Says the bechinas of word. Didn't I do 10 bechinas, 10 nisyonis? Right? And this is what I see. Didn't you promise me Al Tira Avram? And God answers and says, look, Tohu Lahoris B'Avodah Zaros. They switched to Avodah Zarah. Yatsu Lachsa Boris Boris Nishmos. They went after broken wells, meaning false gods. How can I let go of the fact that they violated every one of the Aseret HaDibros? Right? So Avram struck out. So Yitzchak steps up to the plate. He goes to the God who dwells in heaven. Didn't I do the Akedah? Wasn't I ready to be shechted? Now my children be destroyed. you promised Brisius Yitzchak. And God answers, Mara b'Yirmiyahu, they rebelled against Yirmiyahu, but Timu Har Maria, and they made the whole base of Megish Tameh, because if you know what they did up there, remember in the Haftarahs, you see the Kadeshim, Kadeshos, that were the Zara, Baal Asher, all the rest of it. The Lacey the sons of Goyim, Hashem's like this, I couldn't take it anymore. The Lacey, so I got tired of all this Averis. Only Mashiach, and how can I let go the fact that they murdered Zechariah and basically make sure nobody did anything about it? Yaakov steps up to the plate because Avram struck out and Yitzchak struck out. Yaakov, my children that I had so much tsar gidol banim with my children, it goes in Melchel. How can it be taken away right away? How can it be that they killed one guy, Zechariah, and you're killing millions in his place? It's not fair. Which is a good argument. Meanwhile, while Hashem is considering this, Moshe steps up there. So let's say like this, he got a single, right? Moshe Rabbeinu shows up. How much trouble did I put up with the Jews to get them through the desert? My sheep. I had so much chores. How can they be sheared prematurely? And so Hashem said like this. That's a single and a double now. You got a single too. And then Leah steps up to the plate. Rachel shows up to the plate. Bill and Zilpah show up to the plate. Oh, that's already a homeland. Right? Then Hashem says, all right, I hear it. Go back to sleep. I will take care of them. I am sending the Jews into Golus and Bavel, but shulachti, I'm going with them. Shulachti is passive. I'm going with them to Bavel. And if I'm going with them to Bavel, what it means is, hin in Meshovev, Golus B'nechem, then I'll bring them back also. So that's how he spins it. The next one we're doing is also in Losevik, number 11. And again, there's a variation on Medrash. I think this from the Pacific, if I remember correctly. And it's a story pretty much told over here in poetic form. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. What about bringing in the Zchus Avos? Below Sefik means Sefik is must speak enough. So when the Yafa Ketirza, there's to say, when Klal Yisrael, who's Yafa Ketirza, pretty like Tirza, when their sins were filled up to a certain amount that their merit goes, and the angels are screaming, Yirmiyahu Mechelkia leaves the palace, because remember, he had been imprisoned, as I said, by the Jews. This is sad. When the Goyim captured Jerusalem, they let him go. Nebuzaradan says, I heard about you and I have orders to put myself at your disposal. Whatever you want, I'll take care of. You want to stay, you can stay. You want to go to Bubba, I'll take you to Bubba. You want to go to Isha, I've been given orders to take care of you. So Isha Yafar Fastor Meduvel Samasa. So the story is, when he walked out of the jail, and he sees a Yafastor Meduvelis. That's very interesting. A rundown Grand Duchess. You could tell that she was Yafastor once upon a time, but now she's all not. Because Rana Hashem Elohim, and she was therefore scary looking. And so Yirmiyahu is a prophet. He says, I make you swear by God. Tell me the truth. Are you a shade or are you a human? You're pretty like a human. But you have an aura. It's a pachad. Like you're shaded. And she answers, Hey, low shade on me. I'm not a shade. Below golam pachas. I'm not a golam either. You do it, I'm on hard times. Like you say, you can tell I once was pretty and everything was going great, and now not. I've come in hard times. You do it, I was well known in the good old days. And then she says a riddle. I belong to Echad, the Shlosha, and to Shlosha, the Shishim Achas, and to 61, the Shnei Masar, the Shishim Achas, to 12, and to 71. And now I'll tell you what I mean. Say Echad Avram Haya. I used to belong to a guy named Avram. He was the Echad. He was the only one. The Shlosh Shlishia. And then to the Shlosh Zavos. That's the 3. Chok Shnei Masar Hein Shivtiya. And then I belong to 12 tribes. Shishim Riba, B'Shivim Be'echad Sanhedria. And then I belong to Shishim Riba. Then I belong to 71, the Sanhedrin. So she was like Sion, basically. So Yirmiyahu says like this. You've fallen into such hard times because you did sins. Tami Akshiva Si Tshuva. Listen to your own voice and do tshuva. You go back to the good old days. Yana Yosiko Kakashua. You used to be so chashiv, so you know what it was like on the other side. Why don't you repent? Yavalach Bel Sotova. Somebody classy like you belongs in a high class situation. Bel Tzvatova. You don't belong in suffering and misery. The lowly Kori Basa Shabeba. Somebody you should not be called the Basa Shabeba, a wayward woman. So she answers, how can I be happy and raise my voice? All I need to be outside. My children are on the hands of the enemy. My prophets have been beaten up and full of blood. My kings and my princes are all now in slavery, in the collar that they put around the slave. My hotel, my base on Migdash, is now destroyed. And my beloved is left. I lost my boyfriend, as we say. Hashem is not interested in me anymore. And so, Noam Oli Balkar Kishuda, my beautiful mansion was destroyed against my will. My house that used to be full of people is now Eicha Yashavad, it's empty. That's what the woman said to Yirmiyahu. Right? That's what she said. And he said, no, she said to him, and pray to God for me who is now so stricken. Let God say enough with the suffering, and let him save me from the sword and slavery. So Yirmi said, okay, I'll do my part. He started davening for Hashem. Moli Rachmim, you God who are Moli Rachmim, Rachim Kavah Bano, have pity like a parent has on a child. So, and God says, Malov Sheikh Bano, woe to a father whose son is not there, knows I know it's bad, but woe to a kid who's been exiled from the father's house, knows they did Averis. But instead, Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, don't just stand there and be quiet. Go and Mars Machel in such places. Rabbi right? Or maybe she said it to him. Let the shepherds of Klal Yisrael be marbat chinas to Hashem, ki zevi erev Torvus said, and tell them that vicious wolves have torn up the sheep. Shogar Yirmi Anovi Machpil no Kalabi. So Yirmi went to Mars Machpil and started screaming. Tenu Kol Bebichi Tzvi. He said, "Give voice, you Avos Tzvi, you fathers of the Jewish people. Tol Bnei Chamar B'Shevi. Your children made a mistake, and now they're in captivity. Maybe they did like a person who violated the covenant. But wait a minute, you guys didn't. Where's this Chosed Avos of the Crusade bris? Hashem says, don't even try. What can I do? This has already been decreed. The base of Migdash has been left empty its sins. The poet ends saying, "Oh God, Teshivim, may you change your mind and return them as you always were in the past. So that's the poetic part. The next one is H2 Bekibi number 12. This is the famous one we all know, B'Tzeisi Mitzrayim, B'Tzeisi Yerushalayim. That's you remember. The Medrash, this is a knockoff from a Medrash. He actually did it the other day in the beginning of Eicha, where you use the literary artifice of contrast. That's how you bring out points. And so in the Medrash, it goes through a whole bunch of things. Rabbi Yitzchak Pasach, Tachas asher lo avadat Hashem elokech b'simcha b'tov lev of kol, lo avadat zevecha. Then the Tochla it says either you serve Hashem b'simcha rov kol or avadat zevecha b'rov b'shvi b'choser kol. So the Chumash uses a contrast. So therefore, there's a whole bunch of things. Ilo zechisem ha'ikar teviyim asitayim v'achshos lo zechisem tavo charasam v'necha. The word tavo or shimu. Im zechisem shama amir gozen lo zechisem. And so on and so forth. A whole bunch of these. In Zachisem, it'll be Eila Moadei Hashem. As lo Zachisem al Eila ani bochir. If you have Eila this way, you can have Eila that way. So in other words, a lot of things can go two ways. You understand? In life and the destiny of Jewish people. A lot of things can go two ways. And if you're Zocha, go this way. Now, it's too late to go into whole rechus on this. But if you ever look in historicals, let me put it this way. You could have had a state of Israel in 1938. I'm very serious. With the Peel Commission, you understand? You could have had 38, not 48. It was a chizim, you would have 38, you would have 6 million killed. Low Zechizim, you got him 48, 6 million killed, like that. You understand? So, again, poetically, the way Kaliri does it is, I'm sorry, here's the famous business. I'm burning with anger. I'm burning with anger when I contrast Mitzrayim when everything was good, the old Nisim and the flaws, and then now and now I'm full of Kinnos when I talk about Yerushalayim. So when he left Egypt, it's Oz Yasher Moshe. That's the song. When you leave Yerushalayim, it's Vayikon and Yirmiyah. It's the Kinnos. When you left Egypt, it's basically Kama Shochan. We had the Anania covered. When you left Yerushalayim, Chamas El Shochna Lekana, the cloud of God's anger did not depart from us. Gala Yam Roba Kama Yom. When you left Egypt, the wave stood up at Kriyas Yamsuf. When we had the Churban, it's like we got hit by a wave of tzaras. The Gan Shamayim Mitzur Yom, you had the mon. In other words, there was no problem with food when you left Egypt. Obviously, when you left Jerusalem, there was starvation. See, Lana Murman. When you went in Mitzrayim, you came and surrounded Har Sinai. But when you left Mitzrayim, you weren't heading. When you left Yerushalayim, you weren't heading to Har Sinai. You were heading to Babel, slavery. Mari Kvod Hashem so funny that when they left Egypt, they saw Mari Kvod Hashem. We don't even know what that means. Mari Kvod Hashem Keishel Chas V'Tocho Har. Something amazing. But we know the shining, instead of the shining of God's presence, you have the shining of the enemy's swords. Versus school, when you left Egypt, on your way to build a Mishkan, Beis Hamikdash, you had plenty of sheep and animals, but now you have Kitzon L'Tivcha. We are the sheep that are being shechted by the enemy. You have all these happy occasions, Shabbos and Yontif, to commemorate the Tzeisim Mitzrayim, and we have all the sad occasions, a Tainus, like Tisha B'Av, Tainus Babel Redova Hevel, Mitzrayim. Toba Olim Arba Dagon. When you left Egypt, you had all the different Diglei Midbar, Oli Shema Machzir. You had enemy flags planted in Jerusalem. Let's say some Mitzrayim. Yovel Shemitah Shoketa. When you left Egypt, we were heading to a country where we would have Yovel and Shemitah. What does it say? He's Eresh Shoketa. Imagine a community of old, which everybody keeps Shabbos, and then you just have a silence in the whole community on Shabbos. Now imagine a year like that. You see? The Yovel and the Shemitah, because the farmer's not farming. So all the ordinary commercial activity ceases. Right? Like, that's cool, Shoketa. And then, as opposed to Mochel Zizah Korban Kosis, and when you left the other way, Yerushalayim, then you were slavery. It's the opposite, constant din of slavery. Kaparis, of the Karmis, right? You had the Kaparis and all the stuff in the base of Mikdash. Avnei Zikaron, the stones in the breastplate of the high priest. But when you left Yerushalayim, you had the enemy catapult stones. Avnei Kala Kalyabola. Leviim Haronim Shim Zakenim. When you left Egypt, you had the Kohanim and the Zakenim, and now instead we have with Nok Shimon Machum Kohanim. You have the slave market. When you left Egypt, Moshe Yerenu, Aaron Yelchenu. You had the leaders Moshe and Aaron. Who's the leaders now? The Romans, the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, Adrianus Caesar. When we were on the way out of Egypt, we won all the wars because Hashem was with us. I'll give you an example. Amalek defeated the king of Arad, Midian. They won all the wars. And now it's the opposite. Now Hashem's not with us, we lose all the time. Sisri Paroches, the Sidra Mareches. All the things hidden in Kodesh Kodoshim by the Paroches. You have in Mitzrayim. Now all you have is God's anger. On the one hand, when you left Egypt, instead of Olus is Vachim, in which behemoths are shechted, they have B'nai Tzin, the Jews are shechted. Okay? You have the beautiful hats that are Kohen Gadol. Shrikas through closed doors. Now you have the screaming and the shrieks that we talked about before. You have the tzitz that Kohen wears. And now, and now all the crowns have been cast in the dirt by the Romans. Like we would say today, now the Romans are using the tzitz to build a Colosseum. Kedusha and the Buba Koved Hashem Nira, says in Tran. The Gola Mora Ruch HaTumah. You have the Ruch HaTumah. Rina b'Yeshua Chatzot Satro b'Seisi Mitzrayim, Zakas Olo v'Nachos Chol, the cries of the dead and the children suffering. Shulchan Menorah Kol Ketor b'Seisi Mitzrayim. When you leave Egypt, you were expecting the Shulchan Menorah, and now instead Elil Toeva Pesach Matzeva have all the idols. At the end of the day, who controls the Beis Hamikdash today? Yeah, the enemy. Torah to the Klei Chemda. Says in Mitzrayim. We want to end on a happy note, and so we hope we'll have Sasa B'Simcha when we go back to Mitzrayim. Now we'll see. H2 Kapikir Be'alois Elivin Seisim Mitzrayim Kina Ma'ira Manas Kir B'Seisim Yushalayim Oz Yashem Moshe Shir Lo Yinosha Seisim Mitzrayim Vayikonu Yirmiyo B'Nomu Niriyo Seisim Yushalayim Vaysis Kona Meshochanan B'Seisim Mitzrayim V'Chamas Yal Shofnu Olei Kanon B'Seisim Yushalayim Kali Yamram B'Kachom B'Komok B'Seisim Mitzrayim Zidunim Shloba Roshim Sofa B'Seisim Yushalayim Tigana Shemayim when we saw Yosef Amayim, it's Seisi Mitzrayim, Lana Marim, Amayim Amarim, Seisi Mitzrayim, Hashkim Bahar Svivos, Harchore, Seisi Mitzrayim, Kore El Abel, Al Naris Babel, Seisi Mitzrayim, Omare Kvodan, Kesho, Mitzrayim, Cherub Tusha, Otab Tusha, Seisi Mitzrayim, Zabachum Mechobish and Mishka, Seisi Mitzrayim, Sugulas Elukucha, Kitsan Tipot, B'Seisi Mirushalayim, Chagim Shabbasos Motim Yosef B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Tainus Ve'Abel Redova Hevel B'Seisi Mirushalayim, Chavu Alim Larba Degolim B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Vali Ishmaelim, V'Machnes Harelim, B'Seisi Mirushalayim, Yovel Shmita Be'eretz Shoketo, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Mochul Atzmitzes B'Chores B'Koses, B'Seisi Mirushalayim, Kaparas V'Aron V'Avnei Zikaram, B'Seisi Mitzrayim V'Avnei Akela, B'Klei Abela. B'Seisi Mishalayim, Nevim Aronim, B'Shim Zekanim, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Noksim, Umanim, Mochim B'Konim, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Moshe Yereu, Baron Yanchinu, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Nebuchadnezzar, Adrianus Caesar, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Naruch Milchama V'Adonai Shamam, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Rochat Mimenu V'Hineinenu, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Sisri Parachas V'Sidrei Mareches, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Chema Niteches, Volaiso B'Cheches, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Olo Zvachim, V'Sheyan Nichochim, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, V'Cher Medukorim, B'Snei Tzion Hayikorim, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Hari Mikbos, L'Chova Nikbos, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Shrikos Esruos, V'Kos Vos, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Tzitaz V'Havaham Shavara, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Hushach Hanezirah, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Kedusha Nebuah, V'Kvod Adonai Nirah, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Nigolam Morah, Ruchatoma, Seisi Mishalayim, Rina Bishua, Chatzos Atrua, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Zakas Olo, Benakas Cholo, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Shulchan Menorah, B'Cholil Uketara, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Elil B'Soeva, B'Pesel Matzeva, B'Seisi Mishalayim, Torah Teuda, B'Klei Achemda, B'Seisi Mitzrayim, Tom B'Simcha, B'Nos Yogam V'Anocha, B'Shuv B'Yushalayim. Number 13. Again, this is the famous story we know about the bubbling blood. Right? Let's put it this way. If you go by what it says in the Tanakh, by Bavel, the city surrendered and the people were carried off. It doesn't say they died or anything like that. No, it doesn't say there was a massacre. Now, you read about the Romans, there was a massacre, but it doesn't say by Bavel. So what's the Shlech? No. It was a big massacre with the bubbling blood. See, that's where it is. He said, "B'sholchi Yamach v'Vav Yichlavani b'sholchi Yamdav v'Chatzar Eish Migdal." They killed the prophet. No, there was a king Yoash, and Zechariah told him off, and it's not even his fault. It's too long to go into it now. Yoash was the kid that survived the massacre of the house of David, and was raised by the high priest, and hidden away, and then brought out. And then the Kohen Gadol was sort of like mentoring him for 20 years, and then he died. And then the king, who wasn't normal. I mean, he grew up from the age of 1 to 6 in an empty room, hiding in the base of English. So that's not normal. And so, as long as the Kohen Gadol was there to warn him, don't listen to the flatterers. Let me put it this way: would you give a 10-year-old kid $1 million? That's the worst thing you could do to him. Every, what's the right word? Every vulture will sweep in on it. Correct? And he was a kid, and he mentally never grew up beyond the kid. And when the Kohen Gadol died, so then he started believing all the flatterers they say, "You're a god," this, and that, and the other. And when this Zechariah, who was the son of Kohen Gadol, told him off, he said, "Somebody get rid of that guy for me." So they killed him. So it was ingratitude, and it was Kohen and Navi and all that. It was really disgusting. And it seems nobody ever, buried him or covered up the blood. And they said they didn't do Kisi Adam, as the expression goes. And so that became like a big thing. As we all know the story below. And the ground would not swallow up the blood until the Rizran showed up. And he wouldn't be quiet. He got obsessed on it. You see? In other words, the Rizran was a guy. So was he? And he's killing people himself and burning down the base of Mikdash. But he got focused on this. It's Min HaShamayim. And he said, I'm going to make sure this blood stops bubbling. And therefore he massacred people. The blood was bubbling until the Rabbi Tavachin, that's never the Rabbi, the enemy general, his title was Chief Butcher. Because in Oriental monarchies, you give military titles to kitchen things. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but that's what they do. He came to the base of Mikdash, he saw the blood boiling. Where's that? Comes home, he asked the Kohanim, and they lied. They said, it's from it's from we just shechted an animal not long ago. But he got focused on it, and he tested it. It didn't look like the blood of any animals. And he shechted all kind of animals to find out which one this is. Again, it's like a personal thing. And the blood was not silent, but continued like a sea bubbling. So he finally investigated. He found out the reason. It's the blood of a guy who was murdered for having done nothing wrong. But and Nebuchadnezzar said like this: I will avenge this now and plight that blood. Bring out the Kohanim from the base of Mikdash. I will not be silent until this blood is found. He shechted all the adults, the old people by the hundreds, and the kids by the thousands. So this was the massacre of the Kohanim. Okay? By the way, this is 150 years later. And it wouldn't stop bubbling. And so he was like obsessed and freaked. And you saw the children being shechted, and the parents have to watch. Very cruel. And then they shechted the mothers. And I, the poet says, watching this, I said, wow, the one sin comes such a Paris. He started killing women and children. And it was a river of blood like the Nile River. So he got tired of it. And he looked up and he said, do you want me to kill everybody? Right? So that's like, the end of it. I think the Gemara says something like, then he converted. Right? Because he got so freaked out by this, he became a ger. I'll tell you the truth, I won't want to give the guy shlishi. What shul did he go to after he became a Jew? But there are cases like that. I mean, it's rare, but there were, a few, like Nazis and those types, the Ukrainians, and after the war they converted to Judaism. And they had a lot of blood on their hands. But it got to them. So the Jews didn't do tshuva, but this guy did tshuva. It's crazy. The next one is actually very interesting. This is from a Talmud of the Ramban. The Ramban, as you know, lived in a time when they had to do remember the debate, the disputation with the Christians, Pablo Christianity and all that. And therefore, this is from Spain in the 13th century, when there was a major offensive by the Catholic Church against the Jewish religion theologically. And one of the main arguments of the church is the destruction of the temple and the exile of the Jews shows that Jewish religion is the wrong thing. Right? Because look what happened to you. You see? That's a basic feature of Catholic theology. And we cannot deny the basic meaning was destroyed. The only thing is that we say like this. But that's part of the plan, and eventually we'll get it back. So it's like Klal Yisrael talking to the enemies. The Jews and the Goyim. Again, it's a student of the Ramban. And we are called Shkuris Melo Miyayin. It's a famous pasuk. It's coming up in Shoftim in Haftarah. Shkuris Melo Miyayin means like this. You watch a drunkard from booze, and he walks around like, he's out of it. But a person can have tsaris also. There's so much tsaris that they're out of it, even though they didn't drink a drop. God forbid it shouldn't be, Imagine people, for example, in the Holocaust, something like that. Imagine the hostages now, to be perfectly honest. I don't know how they managed. That's Shkuris Melo Miyayin. You're like drunk, you're out of it, you didn't touch a drop of wine. Okay? So the Jewish people are Shkuris Melo Miyayin, Hashlipu tu Payach. Throw away your tambourines. Mutilate yourself. See yourself in Kinnos, and pronounce Kinnos and mourning, and cry before God of your terrible state. And the destruction of your precincts and the children. See Kabai, go like this, like that. Now, the Jewish people saying this, what the heck happened? How could an enemy come into Tziyah near Mamlechus, the royal city? Even Jews now are all supposed to be in there, in different bases. How could the enemy, Admas Zaydim, enemy feet, trample the holy precincts? Not only that, but they busted in right when they were doing a carbon. And the story is, by its reason, the Kohanim didn't stop doing the carbon, and the enemy killed them as they were doing the carbon. Until the blood of the Kohanim was all over the place. So in other words, it's the most kedusha moment. Why'd you do that, God? And then the enemy even went inside the Kodesh Kodashim Beis HaParoches. Lamakam Asher Kohen Gadol Yarisham Aleches. The Kohen Gadol citrus to go in there. And then the answer comes. Kol Yilas Basim Merachim Nishmas. This cry of Basim is heard from afar. And she's crying out like Chesh Mefibas, the daughter of Zaviyah once did. Oh, am I in bad shape? I've drunk in the bitter waters. I've been eaten by lions, the Bavel and Rome and all that. With the big teeth. First Bas Bavel, and then the Mashas, and then Rome. And so things are terrible. God says, what are you crying about? Your sin is new. You caused it. You know what your sin is. Because you had so many Averis, your people kicked out. You abandoned your Nevi'im. No, I warned you again and again and again. I send you plenty of Nevi'im. The Shamich called Trovaich. Instead, you listen to the idols, to the Trophim. And so the Jewish people are sinful. But the Jewish people say, this is like to the Christians, Al tismechi o yachti. Don't rejoice, my enemies. Al shever karni, then I'm busted. Kino falti kamti. Yes, I have fallen, but I will rise again. Shever people try to become. Kino falti, I have fallen, kamti. Hashem is running, and as a matter of fact, Hashem will actually help me get back up again. The same, you can't get this, you guys. The same God that was mefazer me, that scattered me, will ingather me again. Okay? In other words, I'm not rejected. Temporarily rejected. I'm permanently rejected. And actually, the God who sold me out will save me one day from you guys. Okay? From the Catholic. And then it'll be your turn to drink the cup. And then be my turn to bash the heads of your children against the rocks like you did once in mine. This is, like I say, very rough in the Middle Ages. What time is it? Yeah, I think so. There's no time limit. The only reason I see it because these are important. See, unless it's Shalish Rebbe. People have to miss the ball game. Next one, of course, is this was just stuck into the Kinnos. It's not part of any, the availance of anything. From Yehuda Levi, famous Yehuda Levi. Yehuda Levi, like many, was conflicted. He had it good in Spain, but on the other hand, he wouldn't make Aliyah. Everybody figures, why am I here? Why am I not in Israel? This reason, that reason. And it like bothered him because he wrote all these poems about seeing him, but he's living here. And to work out in his own mind, his own inner conflicts, he wrote a book called The Kuzari, right? In which he took a story, it's based on a story, but his is not. And there's this dialogue between the king of the Khazars, who's not Jewish, and this rabbi who's Jewish. And I guess you might say the rabbi's trying to convert him more or less in this. Remember, the frum guy wrote the whole thing. And the king of the Khazars, why should I be Jewish? He's working on his own mind. You know, and why do you guys believe this? And why do you guys do that? And, you know, what do you do with exiles of? And so on and so forth. And each time the king asked the rabbi some question about Judaism, he hits a home run. Gives him a good answer. But one thing not. When the king says like this, so why don't you make Aliyah? Because he said, I guess, what's so special about Israel? Yeah, if you're not Jewish, doesn't make any sense. Oh, no. Israel, super duper, is not just another country. It looks like another country. But even the dirt, the name is super holy. It's saturated with Kedusha. Now, Yehuda Levi never was in Israel. And he never got there. He died journeying to Israel. But as a Jew and as a poet, he knows, you know, it's super Kedusha. I mean, you can feel it. You know, like the Mary Poppins thing, you can feel it. And the king says, so why don't you move to Israel? He says, Nitzchah, you busted me. No, you're right. And it happens 2 or 3 times in the book. Kings, whatever. By the time, the third time, the guy said, I guess, you know, you're right, I'm moving to Israel. And the end of the book is that the rabbi moves to Israel. The king, he wishes him, you know, gives him presents and things like that. He moves to Israel. And this was the poet's own way of working out his own mind, all the excuses until finally he said, I got to go. That was a mistake in the sense that he died on the way, because in those days travel was very dangerous. And he came to Egypt, and with the corona going on, and he died from that. Never got to Israel. There's stories about it, but he never got to Israel. So in this state of mind, right, he's talking to Tzion, because he's a poet. So Tim Eretz Yisrael is like a woman, like Tzion. And he's saying like this, you have to be a poet to appreciate this. We pray for you all the time, 3 times a day. How about you praying for us? Right? Those, give me a hand. Help me on this. We're suffering ghosts, all this other stuff. I wish I could meet my beloved. You know, see him. Hello, Shalom, Shalom, Masarach. Why don't you ask Shalom? Shalom is you inquire about the welfare. Hello, Shalom, Shalom. Why don't you ask about us who are living in Chutzars? We're like jails, you know, prisoners of the Goyen. Dorish Shalom Mechim Yisrael. Those, I mean, we Dorish your Shalom. We inquire about you. We say what about the other way around? Right? We Jews all over the world, north, south, east, west, every day, we inquire how you're doing. Shalom Rachav V'Tziv Mikol Tzavarech. Shalom Asir Tikva. And why don't you ask how me, myself and I'm the Asir Tikva. I'm the prisoner of hope. Right? Those I want to go, I can't go. I want to go. I'm a prisoner. You know? Asir Tikva. No Sindrok Tashemen. I cry over you every day like the snow in Mount Hermon. I am longing to have the zechus to walk on your mountains. I will walk barefoot, he says. I'm like, you can count on me, be like the creature that cries for you. And when I dream Shiva Shvusech about the kibbutz Goliath, when the Jews will come back, I'm an instrument, I'm a harp for your songs. Notice, I'll be the poet. Through poetry, I'll be the poet to express the idea. So that's who I am. Here he goes. Boy, when I think of the Beis Hamikdash, when my heart thinks of the Beis, I imagine what's like a Beis Hamikdash. You see, today, first of all, we've all been in Israel. Second of all, you turn on the internet, and second, you can see everything going in Israel 24/7. You see the coat all the time. 1,000 years ago, You can only dream of what Eretz Yisrael was like Yerushalayim. And to be perfectly honest, like him, he still see people like Moshe and Aaron walking around there. You understand? Libi the Beisel. I want to be in the place of Machanayim and wherever your holy people dwell, your Torah people dwell. Boy, I bet you the Shechina is still in the base of Migdash. And your creator opened opposite Shari Shach Sharach. In heavens, the gate that's opposite the base of Migdash. I'm sure that there's no sun in Israel. It's the Kvod Hashem that gives the light. It's not the sun and the moon. That's for the rest of the world. Eretz Yisrael must be special. I wish I was supposed to roll in the place where the Nevuah used to take place, where the Spirit of God poured out on your seers. At Beis Melucha, you, Yerushalayim, you're the Beis Melucha. I can't even imagine what it's like. It's embarrassing. We don't even think like this. I can't imagine what it's like to be the footstool of God's throne. The Kedusha. In other words, what's wrong with you? Don't you feel it? Don't you smell it? What's wrong with you? How could it be now that the Arabs and the Christians or whatever are sitting in those thrones? Oh, if I could only take a boat and sail, to the place where you revealed yourself to your prophets. Or make me wings, right? I would like to go to Bris Ben Abasarim. I'll throw myself on the ground. I'd roll in the dust happily. Or to stand by Marsa Machpelah, the Kivri Avos. In other words, Yerushalayim, even Hebron, must be such Kedusha there from the Marsa Machpelah. To see the places mentioned in the Bible. Hor, Har Havorim, Asher Shomo Gilot Merach, where Moshe and Aaron were hanging out. Chayin Neshamas are there. In the rest of the world, you have air. In Yerushalayim, you have Chayin Neshamas. It's Avir Tzabach. You have a different type of air. I mean, more drawer Avkas Avarech. I'm sure it smells better than spices. But Nova Sufna Rayach. Yinam Lanavshi Alchar Yochim. I'd be glad to walk naked and barefoot. Just a chance to walk in Eretz Yisrael. Ali Charvish Mama Shadbrach. On the ruins of the Kedusha that used to be there. To go to the base of Migdash spot where the Aron used to be in the Kruvim, that they used to be in the Cheder Chadarim in the Kodesh Kodoshim. I would clip all my hair, right? Like in a Velus. Chil Eretz Babel is Nizrach. When I think how Babel has profaned all your holy people. How can I even want to eat or drink when I think the fact that the Goyim own Eretz Yisrael? When I see the dogs now in your holy places. How can I take any pleasure in the sunlight? When I see Eretz Yisrael, it's a play on words. When the Orvim, when the buzzards are picking Aravim, when the buzzards are picking the what's left over your flesh. Kosei Gumlat. Oh, bitter cup. Be slow. No, I can't take so much poison. But they think that the Har Bayis is a mosque and a church is there. I can't take so much poison. Harpi mat, give me a break. Just to think about it fills me with too much bitterness. When I think of the base of Ola, I drink your wine. It's Oliva Mem Sishmach. And when I think of all of them, that's the kingdom in the south, the kingdom in the north, I drink the bitter wine. Sion Klilas Yofi. Sion is the epitome of beauty. Abba B'chein Ori Lamod. Ubach Nikshru Nafshos Chavrech. And people like me, who are your Chaverim, we are bound by you by a soul. Hey, Masmech Mashalvot. We're the only ones that really count. We're the ones who are happy when you're happy, and we're unhappy when you're unhappy. You can't be a Jew. He probably felt guilty going to a simcha in Spain, and Eretz Yisrael is in bad shape. Whoever does that is not really nafshuk sure of Eretz Yisrael. You understand? You should feel the pain. From the pit of captivity, these people yearn for you, meaning people like me. And we are the ones who bow every day towards Eretz Yisrael. I think of those masses who are now in Golas, and it's Pazma hardly give up, and scattered all over the place and haven't forgotten you. We hold on to your skirts from afar. We want a little bit of you. What about the other countries and the glories of Rome and Egypt and this and garnished? Shinner apostles, you other Godam, you think you could compare to them? As Hevel, you can compare their Hevel to your Urbatumim, right? A big palace that says garnish, compared to the Kedusha. Who can be compared to your Mashiach and your Nevi'im? Who can be compared? What other country has the Levium and the Shirim? All the other guys things that are garnished. Evil and Moshe the only place God actually wanted to dwell. Happy is the person who gets to dwell among you. Happy is the person that gets to see Mashiach when he waits and arrives at the point when the Or of Tzion, which is not a light, the Or of Tzion arises, and this Or pierces the dawn. When you return once again to your glorious youth. So in other words, this is one longing. The reason we do an Tisha B'Av, obviously, is because he sees the Eretz Yisrael we don't see. We should see, right? It should be you get off the plane and you're like, oh my God. Maybe the first time we went to Israel, maybe. Right? The second, the third time, where's the Sheirut? It should be like this. So at least once a year, we read this poem. Okay. The next one, this will be the list of the regular Kinnos, right? And Shali's Roof of Asia, as we all know. This is a cautionary tale. Once upon a time, Paris was the biggest yeshiva in Europe. It's funny to think that way, but it was. And one of the guys in yeshiva, got alienated. I don't remember exactly what the reason was. Nobody knows exactly. And in the end, they were going to really shepherd and persecute or something like that. He converted. Him and Shimon. And not only that, he must have got so angry at everybody. He said, I'm going to take the whole yeshiva down, and he did. Right? Took the whole thing down, the whole Jewry in France, and the whole Bali Tosas here. Nicholas Stone. Because he said, I want you to know that the Jews don't study the Bible, they study the Talmud. And the Talmud is full of all kinds of things against Christianity. And this started a whole chain of events, which led, as we know, to the burning of all the Jewish books. So, in Paris, that we're familiar with. And it wasn't that long ago, by the way, that they had Parshas Chukas. I know they talked about it in Schultz. So when that happened, they ended up burning all the Gemaras and things like that. Pretty much they burned just about every Hebrew book in France, which put an end to the period of Tosas. Like I told you before, if you don't have any books, you're out of business. Okay? How many books you're out of business? So the guy, Mom, took the whole Lakewood down. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing. So one of the students in yeshiva was young Maram Rottenberg, who became Mayor Rottenberg, later on became Maram Rottenberg. And he knows the poem that we just did, Sion Halo Tishali the Shlomo Sarayach, where he says, Sion, how come you don't ask about us? And he made a kind of a bitter, I don't want to say a parody, but something like that, because he sees the Sefer Torah burning. Now, I don't know if they burned actually Sefer Torahs. Maybe they did. I think they burned Gemaras and whatever. It could be. Because, no, the Christians respect the Bibles, the Talmud. But it could be they burned it. Let's say they did. And this was imagine seeing this. Let me say it again. Thousands of books. I don't remember how many cartloads were burned. And we're talking about the Middle Ages. Every book had to be handwritten. So how many copies do you have of any Sefer altogether? It's not like now with abundance of books. So it was a major catastrophe. And the Maram Rottenberg, like Yuna Halevi, says like this: Sion, aren't you worried about us? So he addresses the Torah that way, but in a more bitter way, right? Shali Roof of Aish, L'Shlom Avilayach. Shoel Sholem means inquire about the welfare. So in other words, like I said before, we're always talking about the Torah. Do you ever talk about us? Shali Roof of Aish, you who were burned down in fire. Ask about us. We're the ones, and he's talking about the B'nai Torah, the yeshiva guys, because who's the ones who really feels it? The learners. We who wanted to dwell in Chatzar Zulayach, in the courtyards of your splendor. Notice Yehuda Halevi is talking about Eretz Yisrael. He's talking about the Torah. When he said we want to dwell in your courtyards and live in your house, it means in learning. Hashofim ba'avarza kom b'Hashem. We're the ones rolling now in the ground, not like Yehuda Halevi said. I want to roll in the ground of Eretz Yisrael. We're not rolling the ground in sorrow. Only because everything's been burned. Holchem kashay v'noah. There's no light. The light has been extinguished for us. But come Lord Yom, man, we're yearning for the light of the day. There is light. If there's no Torah, there's no light. Hashi Yizrach Alim B'Layah. We want the light that used to shine in you and us, meaning the Torah. Ushlom enosh nenach b'chalei. Do you ever inquire about me? Enosh nenach b'chalei. I'm busted with a broken heart. In mourning, Tomid Mekonan Sibirach. always in Mekainan, saying Kinnos. And I'm crying like serpents and ostriches who are supposed to shriek real loud. Bitterly making a hesped over you. How could the Torah itself, which was given an age, be burned by age? It's a poetic question. How could it be that was given by Hashem in age is now burned by human age, and the people who touched the Torah weren't themselves burned? How could that be? How long will you Goyim, Adina, you have it, will have it dainty and easy? How will you dwell in peace and quiet? And we Jews, the prachim, the flowers, the children of the Torah, are covered with shame. How long can you, because the Catholic Church judge, they really had a trial, this is true, they had a trial in the Talmud, and the Talmud was found guilty and condemned to burn. Who the heck are you to judge us? You bring us to Mishpat, to your plilim, to your courts, and you find us guilty? Oh, tigzer lister b'dashesh b'chukim. Before long, you'll burn everything. Therefore, I can't wait. I'm happy when you get what's coming to you. Sinai, but now I turn to God. Sinai, Mount Sinai. I don't understand. The Torah was burned, which was given to our Sinai. Did God choose a low mountain, as we all know Sinai was, to indicate the Torah was low and could be burned by the Goyim? It's a bitter parody. Leo Samofis Lodoski says, were you a Mofis? Were you an example for the Torah that one day you'll be brought low and burned? It's like a bad mashal. The Chazal have a famous mashal of a king who's foresaw that his son would die at the wedding, and therefore he did something with the wine. Are you like that? When you gave the Torah, you knew the Torah would be destroyed by the Goyim the way it is now? Is that the sick mashal? Tachas mil tiskatsi sina lebushi b'sach. O Mount Sinai, don't wear a nice garment, a meal. Put on sackcloth. Tad lebush almud is tachlis b'sach. Switch your clothes to widow's clothes. Ori demos adei chanachad. I, me, the poet, I pour down tears like a river. I hope my tears will reach the kever of Moshe and Aaron, because they got the Torah. Moshe and Aaron Bahara heart, the Eshal. And if I could reach them, I would ask the bitter question: is there a Torah Chadasha? Is there another Torah Taka? The New Testament or something like that? Is that why we burned the Old Testament? Is that the shot? Chodesh Shlishi, Book Sharbi. This all happened in the month of Sivan, which is supposed to be Mount Torah time. Book Sharbi, that was to destroy your beauty. God of the Luchas. We know that what happened in Sivan and in Tammuz, Hok Sharvi, the fourth month, Tammuz, the 10 Commandments were smashed. Is that the shot of the Torah? Is that our fate? You give us 2 tablets and then you destroy them? You give us the Torah and then you burn them? God of Luchos. Is that called, Tashim Kefil? Is that called paying kefil? I don't think I'll ever have appetite again. I asked myself, how can I ever like food again after what I saw? When I saw your spoils thrown into the streets of Paris, where do we have in the Torah that you take all the goods of the city and burn them in the street? Is there an adachas? Right? It's called shlola tikbos over chova'ir. Isn't it weird that the Torah, the Shas, was taken and thrown in the city? Like, what is it, an Ir Nidachas situation? Right? I don't know pshat in this. I can't find a straight way. I don't understand what happened. Have your straight, I believe in a just God, have your just paths now gone crooked? I would prefer rather than drink honey to bathe myself in my tears. And I should end up in shrouded mourning. In other words, I don't want to hear any comfort. I prefer crying in tears. It would be pleasant for me to continue to cry until I meet those who hold on to your skirts, meaning those who are from. But the problem is, if I keep crying forever, the tears will evaporate on my cheeks. Because I know it'll drive me crazy, and I can't go and follow all the wanderings of your master. It seems that God said, I'm out of here. He took his money and left. And with him, he went on a journey, and all your shadows are gone. So in other words, if the Torah is burned, the Shekhinah is gone. The Shekhinah is gone, then I'm alone. If I'm alone, then I'm sitting here, I'm bereft of them. I feel like a tower on an empty ship. I will never again listen to songs and singers. Because as far as I'm concerned, your flute has been silenced. No, let's put it this way. If I don't hear the Kol HaTorah, then the music is stupid. I prefer the nashos of your life, of the corpses, and that's why I want to wrap myself in sackcloth. It's strange. The sun shines, and everybody can see in the light of the day. Only I and the Torah can't see the sunlight. We're walking dark. You see? Because you have to have a certain sensitivity. If this happened, there's no sunshine. Okay? It shines for everybody else, he says. Right? So I say to the Torah, cry to God over your misfortune below Yisrael. Maybe he'll remember the old days. Put on sackcloth because of the Havara Lochalik Yasis, that's in the Gemara. I hope that equal to your suffering, God will bring you Nechama. So sickly. Happy days will come again. Once again you will dance. And one day the shadows will be, the darkness will be put aside and will go back to light. The reason we read this on Tisha B'Av is, as I say, the aspect of the Korban is foreign. Right? Down the ages, how many Jewish holy books have been desecrated and destroyed? We don't have any old ones. Why don't we have any old books? What's the oldest Torah? It's not that old. Just destroy them. You get it? The Cossacks and in World War II, they used them for patching shoes. I'm serious, things like that. Whenever they killed the Jews, there's a separate korban on books, and that's part of what happened on Tisha B'Av, and that's part of what we're mourning. Almost there. The next one, I think we have two more to do in Elitzion. Next one is, of course, the famous one from the show up. I say famous. Years ago, you didn't do this. Little by little, changes kick in the frum world. For a long time, they never had. I was young, you never did. There was no such thing. It's not in the regular Kinnos. And then I remember, like 35, 40 years ago, something like that. The sensibility kicked in that they should do something for the show. And then it was a question which one. And Rabbi Schwab had one they used in Washington Heights, and that became the one. I remember me and someone else were translating it at that time. I know that's what the one the art school used. So this is written by Rabbi Schwab in a very stylized kind of classic form. You know, it's hard to do justice to the Shoah, but of course he tries to touch. I mean, I know what he did. You try to touch on all the angles. You know, the concentration camp, the shooting pits, the gas chambers, the this, the that, the other. Here we go. Stufi mabul dom shemasam shkama. You see those who were swept away in the marble of blood. Skui imikabocha. It's a good expression. These are the killings of people in the pits. 1.5 million Jews were shot in pits between June and December 41, before they came up with the gas chambers. And then he says, come out, Shemaim, Major Shift Israel, Edus, Kehillas, Arm, Galilas, Chaboris, Moses, Komodeo. Whole communities were exterminated. Yitim Hagiman, Terinam, Ashdos, Nachli, the most. The tremendous valley of tears. Alayalofim, Gufim, Nisrafim, and the burned bodies, these, of course, are major, what do you call the crematoria. The Al-Saria Torah, Machzikim, Mesor, Prichik, and all the from the Saria Torah, the big Rabbanim, the Yeshivas, Achovshim, Midrashas, Mamoras, Tinokos, Biram Yakirim. Bonus, Bochum, Sabim, Sobas, children, grandparents, Zaram, Tapin, Shalodim, Bagan, Rabbas, Ribbos, Ahvoim, Muslim, and Frodo, and all the Hab Mechaim, all those who had lived good lives. Estomim Drosh, O Lord, avenge their blood. Kisisas Rosh Kolim and Bafim. When the time comes for you to take the count of the scattered, because we believe God counts every blood. Kol nafshas amazed me, 6 million. Shlisha 1/3 of them were like burned. Right? The rock sub and sower. The Kamechem Hafta. They were killed by, but Brak Zam Besoer. Lightning, he calls it blitzkrieg. Gol Adam Zecher Tam Matich Hafta. Oh God, be a Gol Adam and avenge their blood. The screams and the cries, just imagine in the gas chambers, the shrieking, when they found out. He already demanded the most, the rivers of blood and their tears. Called every tremble of those who were torn apart by the dogs, because there was a lot of that. Machnas Apram caving up, then the concentration camps, the extermination camps, caving up, the tortures, of the terrified souls, the humiliation, and the laughter of the enemy at our misfortune, the spitting and the humiliation, that's something people don't know so much. I actually have a book with me about it. Starvation, thirst, shigon. How many people went crazy? Itzavan, terrible depression. Kisholon, the stone people had no strength. Kol nakas chol, and the cries of the victims. That you can't forget. Timras Oshan, day of the crematorium. The Timras Oshan, the rise of the smoke. Kitter Mikishon, till Matzos Mud. Piles and piles of bodies and body parts. Chadri Arab, that's the gas chamber. Kol Shagas Mikal Nechon, the screams of the people inside the gas chamber as they're being gassed, and they realized what was happening. Sirchan Gufas, and the stench. Gvias Gufas, and the tortured bodies, Galadom and Amas and Watson, which you use like a fertilizer. Tarfim Labaris Chalbeim, Ishul Kidin Shashim, and those who used, what they say, lamp shades out of human skin, and people make jewelry from the soap. That's right. One is the soap and one's the lampshades of the skin. Those who made soap out of the thing. Lucretius is supposed, so Russian prose. This is Dr. Mengele when he went like this. Like that. So Lucretius is supposed to Russian prose. Liyamin shibud perach. Salmovis is small. You go to the right, it's hard work. Go to the left, it's death. And that they shot at all those victims in the pits. And they tortured our sister, they violated the Jewish women. And they did all these experiments. I think they did these experiments on people, and of course they, made them can't have children and things like that. The doctors, cruel doctors who gave them terrible poisons and medicines to drink. And of course, those who had to flee, right, in burrows and bunkers. And Timulam, and how many kids ended up in Beis Shmad. In other words, it had to give them to Christians, and they never got them back. These people are like Tommy from Carmenola. Who can count how many Son Kadoshim there were? But Kol Shema Yisrael never Shloel. They all shouted Shema Yisrael. This is Rabbi Shmuel. It's not true, everybody. Some people said Shema Yisrael. You understand? But he wants to make it like that. They believe that Hitstiku Adin Alfan Man Shabashim they sang Ani Mamin. I mean, there were those who did. Let me tell you something. Those were just terrified and went down terribly. V'chein, and therefore, Nisharam Kiyosam Nidrim. We, the survivors, are left. Like a Yosam Nidam, like a shocked orphan. We don't even have grave sites to visit because all these people were burned. The ashes were scattered. We don't even have kvarim. Save us. And a safer at home, a guy puts in the back. This is for my grandfather because he never got buried. So this will be the closest I can do. All we can say is the blood has not stopped bubbling, like the numbers around. That we can say. It's like the blood is not bubbling. And we know there exist mountains of dirt. That's not the right word. Of ashes. Somewhere. Let's put it this way. What happened to the ashes of the bird? They're somewhere. Me and Malel Tsar Yisrael, Asher Dr. came to Trevis. Who can describe the Tsar of Yisrael who have gone crazy from Tsar? And you can't blame them. And our erect statue has now been brought down. Send this in Or Chodesh and send the Ruach Elokim should bring Macheves once again upon us. And now, the newest Kinnos, sadly, I got you all have a copy over here. Rabbi Shimon just brought in his Mizrahi magazine there. They actually have it in the magazine. If you have one copy in the back, it's from Rabbi Ramon, who's the big Gadol, the posek, whatever, the keep us through God world, and he. And I guess he must have said, like everybody in Israel, you can totally understand that we can't let this one go by without being mentioned. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. For the Kina Maris Charbos Barzel, which they call the current war Charbos Barzel. And he went to LEC, I'm not going to do that, but he wrote a Kina for the victims last Simchas Torah. As you read it, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, Nepach Mecholenu L'Tugud Koderes, turned into terrible grief. B'yom Zeh Nifru to Al-Gederos, Yishuvi Otef Afakim Usteirot. So literally, Nifru to Al-Gederos, that's actually what happened. They busted through the security fence, and they came to the Otef, which is the, along the border, and to Afakim and Steirot. Eichar Tzenu Hoyle Mirmas. And how Eretz Yisrael turned into a place to be trampled and humiliated by Timaleris Hamas, not Timaleris Hamas, but Timaleris Hamas. Mirtzuat Azam Makor Hareshab, from the Gaza Strip, which was the source of the evil. Mishorish Hamas Yotzat Sefa, from the Shorish Hamas came out like a serpent. Eicha b'makom Shevat Kofis, and happened on Simchas Torah. How could it be that instead of Shevat Kofis, this will not Shemim Chatifus, people had to flee for their lives from fear of being chatuf, being captured. Oyev achzer matzis reifus, the enemy matzis reifus lighted fires, rotzeach mashpil bli harbos, and he murdered. It was mashpil without stopping. Eichem b'mkom tfilas hageshan, instead of saying tfilas hageshan, Yora, because you all know they came 6:30 in the morning. Yora dodi la rugas habosam, and instead of dodi la rugas habosam, shoshanim nitbochin. Instead, shoshanim, meaning beautiful people, were killed. Chil Hashem, l'mratzchim al tidin yad vashem. Oh Lord, don't give any yad vashem to these killers. Eich mishnashim b'sheish. How could it be in the 76th year of the state of Israel? We have it. In other words, I thought that was over with the Shoah, right? And you're telling me they're burned? Jews are being burned? Medinat Israel, that's what it means. Yehudi b'machmo nechab b'lochish. What? I thought only in the Holocaust people were hiding in the bunkers and whispering to each other. But you and I know, right, on October 7th, those who survived were hiding, rooms and holes in the ground and things like that. We know the stories. Tachas only Shabbos Kodesh instead of only Shabbos. Eicha b'nei Sinai Yikarim. How could it be that the b'nei Sinai Yikarim nofel b'yad anasim arurim? These accursed, violent people. Meruti lechi isun makim. How can we, who've always been meruti lechi, those who've always been slapped on the cheeks, are now given over to makim? Achim chatuvim b'yech hamasim, and our brothers are now in the hands of Hamas. V'yom bo shimcha his chalel, in the day that was a chil Hashem, lochem nefku Hashem chalagadol. Yet at the same time, there were heroic soldiers who fought back. Lochem nefku Hashem chalagadol. Some people fought for you thing. Habitarei mi kamcha Yisrael chazkenu v'amsinu bold sin goel. Kabarzo lochmu amitzot v'amitzim ahuvin. And now he turns to the soldiers that fought back. They fought like Barzo, Amitzot, Omutz, Adini Nefesh, Miyasar Meginim, these fine people who tried to save people. The Gvurasam Rina Chuvas Alomim, in their Gvur we saw Chuvas Alomim, Niskavo Kamasenu Dargulim. And we had a little bit of a Zokef Kfufin. Meaning, the whole thing is so humiliating. What they did to us, we can only take a little bit of comfort, is that the word? Pride. In those that did fight, because there are plenty that did. On the day that Eretz Yisrael filed, that day also showed the gvura of those who fought back. The people fought the Mesiras Nefesh. Take vengeance. We Jews are called Al Shimcha Gadol. Zocher Maskis Brisa Masena, remember the bris. Mitzafim Midar Mamdil Chalasenu. The Arabs are standing Mitzafim Nadar, the north and south, to wipe us out. It's only your bris that keeps us going here in Eretz Yisrael. Arise Pars Yosel Limus. And then the damn Iranians, right? The Arise Pars, the dictators of Iran, Yosem Alilos have organized all kind of plots. Maptachim Shochel and Nosi Tfilis. They send barrages. Obviously, he wrote this after Iran shot the rockets. So Fugi Yoshu Veinim Yachos, and we Jews sat in shelters as Nisech Rov and Oratios, and we saw Nisim because hardly anything landed in Israel. Kanfi Ruch Kanfi Nisharim. Ro Ra'inu Ba'arais Yolim. We've seen our soldiers act. It means in terms of their, what's the right word? Their Beinonim Lachaver with each other, their mutual solidarity, like Kanfi Ruch Kanfi Nisharim. We're in a time when we see parents and children burying their loved ones. Be mechazik them, O Lord. A wave of anti-Semitism has swept the world. The enemy is trying to crush those who are makdishei shmecha. They chase your shluchim, those who carry the flag. May you skip over us and cover us with love. Hashib Chatufim, return the hostages. Kordon Lashvim, call freedom for those in captivity. The Ta'arukin, Akurim rather, and those who've been uprooted, plant them again, meaning those communities that have been destroyed, reestablish them. Shakem, pursuing, Romim Nikoim, those who have been wounded, put them back together again. Those who have been nidka, crushed, romain, give them a chizik again, make them, psychologically well. Now, hel ados b'chesed rachim, modim anachtam dinu seinu al gol, seinu b'abdus nafshenu, b'uchadim tolichinu komis artenu, hachesh ben dav meshiach sinkenu. I don't think we have to say it. We just read it together. So, and hours late, so we understand the sentiments that are moving this. And now we'll do a Litzion. That's it. Okay, here we go. Elitzion bi'oreho, kamo isha b'tzireho, echivsu lo chagurasa, alba ni'ureho, alei armon, asher nutash, bi'ash masa, adoreho, Bial Bias Mechorfiel, Istok Mikdash, Adoreho, Elitzio, Yoreho, Kamo Isha, Betsireho, Echibsulo, Kagurasak, Alba Niureho, Alegalus, Mishor Seel, Mani Meshir, Simoreho, Bial Domom, Ashir Shupach, Kamo Mime Yoreho, Elitzio, Yoreho, Kamo Isha Betsireho, Vechipsula Chagurasak, Alba Nureho, Ale Hegyom, Lecholeho, Ashir Domam, Yoreho, Bialvad, Ashir Shamein, Obito Sanhedrium, Elysium, Yoreho, Kamo Isha, Leho, Vechipsula Chagurasak, Alba Nureho, Ale Zibche Smideho, Upidyone Bechoreho, Yalchilo, Kaleheho, Umizbach Kitoreho, Alicia, Bioreho, Kamoisha, Bitireho, Yo Hipsilo Fagurasa, Abab Neureho, Alekape, Velocheho, Bene David, Gebireho, Yayofyon, Ashir Hosham, Be Saru, Kisoreho, Elysium, Bioreho, Kamoisha, Bitireho, Echibsulo, Chagurasak, Abal Nureho, Alekavod, Ashir Golo, Beis Kurban, Devireho, Pialoches, Ashir Lochas, Misom Sakin, Chagureho, Lixion, Bioreho, Kamoisha, Bitireho, Tzvat, Chagurasak, Abal Nureho, Ale Machas, Barov Machos, Asher Huku, Nizireho, Yalniput Saleseo, Ololeho, Yoreho, Elitio, Yoreho, Kamoisha, Nizireho, Nechibsulo, Chagurasak, Abal Neureho, Alesimchas, Iveho, Yeho, Yal Inui, Vinechorin, Nediveho, Tohoreho, Elitio, Yoreho, Mitsureho, Vechibsulo, Chagurasa, Abal Nureho, Ale Pesha, Ashir Ibso, Slul Derech, Ashreho, Tvos, Yoleho, Shedufeho, Shehoreho, Yoreho, Shobesireho, Vechibsulo, Chagurasa, Abal Nureho, Los Bechorfeho, the Ace Rabu, the Goreho, the Alrishas, the Gadfeho, the Soch Mishkan, Chadereho, the Elitzium, the Oreho, Moisha, the Sireho, the Chibsulo, Agurasak, Abal Nureho, Aleshimcho, Ashir Chulo, the Fikame, the Sireho, Yaltachan, Yisavolo, Shobushma, Amoreho, Elitzium, the Oreho, Kamoisha Betzireho, the Chibsulo, Agurasa, Abalureho, Ashri Yushui Sechem. Ashri Dirly Shabbat. Zecherak Tuchel.